Hello. How are ya? I'm just gonna sit here for a minute and see if anybody else wants to come up and catch in from the last one. Thanks, Progressive Moose, for doing such a great job. Sat and listened for most of it, and you had a great conversation going on in there, which we'll try and continue. If we can get some of the same people in, would be, great. If not, we'll start all over again. Well, not all over again. I want to kind of pick up from where you were kind of, sort of, but I've got a few other things I want to talk about first too, because I'm from British Columbia, so in no way do I get to vote in this election for you, but I just want to point out some of the things that, from the outside looking in, the rest of Canada sees, and how it affects the rest of us in the country. Now, to be very clear, I'm a big fat orange potato nut. No. Alright? I'm very liberal. And I don't make any bones about that. So, yep, we'll start doing that here in a minute. We're just going to kind of see if we can get some numbers up and get some people to join. And then we'll, get some people up. I like to kind of, hey, how you doing? I like to do things a little differently. I don't usually run a panel because my show is more of a Canadian history. And I don't do a lot of lives. I'm not really, So I do panels, but we're just going to give it a few minutes to get some people in here, and then we'll start the panel up and get some people in here. But again, I want to make a shout out to Progressive Moose and the rest of the team that's going to be continuing to do this election connection on Beaver politics for the next 24 hours, and hopefully right up until the election results tomorrow. And just to kind of start too with MPPs, okay, so that's how I want to kind of start this conversation, because I know a lot of it, I'll talk about who you should vote for. Should it be Doug Ford? Should it be Bonnie Crombie? Should it be Mike Schnelly, or how you ever pronounce his name? That's why I have to have my notes. So you have, you're not voting for them. It's the same with the federal election. You're not voting for Pierre Poilievre, and you're not voting for Jagmeet Singh or whoever, or Elizabeth May. You're not voting for them. You're voting for the best person in your area, in your community. So when I'm looking at the stats, the unemployment rate in Ontario right now is 7.6%. Right? I'm not comparing. We're not going to do the compare. Yeah, you have a good night. Thanks for doing what you do. And I'm not going to do the comparable from my province to your province or whatever, Ontario, right? We're going to discuss Ontario because that's where you need to vote. And that's where you need to be. And you need to vote. Because in Toronto alone, your unemployment is the second highest in the province. Windsor, Ontario has got the highest unemployment rate in the province. And then there's Toronto and Oshawa. And so I think, when you ask what has Doug Ford done in the last, and he didn't have to call this election, which is costing $2 million. Doug Ford is running against Bonnie Crombie, who is the ex-mayor of Mississauga, Ontario. I was the mayor there for a fairly long time. I did a fairly good job from what I'm understanding. Like I said, I've never lived in Ontario. I'm just here to kind of put out some facts and let you know how it looks like from the other part of the country. And so, again, I'm not here to influence your vote. You should go to smartvoting.ca. But again, you're not voting for Doug Ford or Bonnie Crombie or Merritt Stiles or Mike Schrenner. You're voting for the person in your city, in your area, in your ward, right? So, you go into your voting, and you go and you look and see who's going to be your best MPP, who's speaking out for your community, because at the end of the day, your MPP brings that to Queen's Park, and if they don't have any backing from you or no voices to represent, right? Rob was the man. Well, not really. But yes, it's called smartvoting.ca. And you have to pick the best person for your area, for your community. Who's going to step up for your community? Who's going to, you know, help you get more money for hospitals? Who's going to look at education over, you know, for your community? Who's going to help you build schools in your towns? Who's going to help you with infrastructure in your areas, right? So that's what you want to be looking at more than what Doug Ford's done. We all know that Doug Ford has done a lot of nothing, but cost a lot of money and make up a lot of stuff. You know, again, with the green belt and the beer and the $1 beer and who knows, you know, this is stuff that we hear. And here's another question I got. How come you guys got bagged milk still? What's up with that? Like, or how come we don't have bagged milk in my town? I don't. Do you see, anybody else got bagged milk still? But in Ontario, you guys still have got milk in bags. Why? Not that it's a bad thing, just a question to throw out there. Like, why do they still have milk bags? A question. Alright, so, yes. Welcome to Beaver Politics again. We're just going in the first little bit, because we have 3 hours of me. Yay. Talking about Ontario politics. Big families, yes, we have 4-liter jugs out here. And Quebec, yeah. I just asked a question because we used to have them here when I was a kid too in British Columbia. Now all of a sudden they're gone. I'm like, what happened to the... How come they get bagged milk and we don't get it anymore? More than anything. Right? It was like, what the hell? Like, why? I mean, we have a dairy out in Creston, BC that actually sends you milk, and it's organic, grass-fed dairy in glass jars. We can buy that. I agree. Like, I'm not dissing the bags. I'm asking why the hell we don't have them still. That's what I mean. Oh, we have 4-liter jugs out here, and we have like these cartons. But we used to have bags of milk. Like when I was a kid, we used to have little you know, jugs, and you put the milk in. Why don't we have them anymore? Oh, that's funny, right? Thank you. Hi, Trudy. But again, my question is, I'm not dissing the bags. I want to know why we don't have them. Anyways, that's not got nothing to do with the election. So, I guess we'll see if anybody wants to come up. Best to skip the glass and drink the milk straight from the bag. We do it right from the carton. Again, I'm not dissing that. I want to know why we don't get them anymore. So now I gotta figure out how to do this. Live guests. And, okay, so I gotta figure out what box I'm using here, I guess. I don't want that many. No. I only want, like, I don't know. Okay, that'll be good for now. Oh no. Okay, we're gonna do this. And we got some people coming up, and because like I said, Progressive News had a good conversation going on before we had to cut and break off. And from what I was hearing, there was a lot of you know, information going on about the private healthcare system that Ford's trying to push forward, which, to be fair, this is happening in other provinces as well. Not so much here as it is in Alberta next door. And, but again, it's actually funny because in our area, they're always wanting to know why we don't get to go to Alberta, because Calgary's closer than Kelowna for healthcare, and it's like, money? We don't pay into Alberta's healthcare and taxes, and they don't pay into ours, like it's provincial, right? So, hello, it's March. And again, I'm from British Columbia, looking at the election in Ontario, and wanting to know, like, what has Doug Ford done? I mean, I see him, walking around with his Never 51, jersey on today on TV, but I also see him down there kissing the ring. So would he really actually, stand up for Canada, or would he just, 1 minute, he's a waffler. Like, I'm going to cut Musk off, we're not going to do Starlink, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're back on. Like, what the hell? Like, stand up. If you're actually alcohol. I think his obsession is more of that. You know, his dollar of beer stuff. And let's put the alcohol in, but let's lock down the MJ. There's 100 million. Anyway, hello, Smarsh. So again, like I said, it's just kind of ridiculous that they keep making the same mistakes. Yes, he does. Apparently, I think a lot of them do. But you know, like he's got the rich friends, and again, the Ford family, right? And like not even condemning the fact that he's allowed his daughter to throw rocks at and behavior like during the federal election. If we remember correctly, that was, you know, Ford's daughter. I'm going to ask you one thing when I've got you coming up here. Please mute your mic before you come up so there's no background noise. And I will, once we get a few people up here, I will get you to introduce yourself, give us your name and what province you're from. And if you're not from Ontario, you know, I guess we'll have you on and get some perspective, but I really want to talk to people from Ontario and want to know what their perspective is and what they're voting and why they're voting what they're voting. Licking the boots. Oh yeah. Everybody's down licking the orange potatoes boots. Especially Daniel Smith. You forget that the, you know, Canadian taxpayer paid for that goddamn pipeline. Oops, sorry, I'm not supposed to swear. Oh, are they? Why are... They shouldn't be taking anything away from First Nations people. Like, are you kidding me? Come on up then. I think I got somebody moderating. If not, I'll figure it out. Ford is doing a great job in Ontario. Okay, well, what is he doing great? Let's hear it. Like, I'm from British Columbia. I'm not here to judge, but I want to... Let's hear your perspective. You okay with losing your public health care? Because that's what's happening. Do you know in 1991... that there was too many doctors in Canada? We had an overabundance of doctors in British Columbia, and the Americans started wanting, you know, pay them a lot more money. So they all went to the American. They all jumped over to the States. Americans were paying them 3 times what they were getting paid in Canada because there were so many of them. They didn't have to pay them a lot because there were so many doctors. I'm not kidding. You can Google it. Receipts right in front of me. I could actually read you the article. People pay for public health care. Yeah, they do in taxes. But you know what your taxes also pay for? The water that runs right out of your tap. It pays for the road you drive on. It pays for a lot of things. And you don't pay nearly what you actually take out in services. So you want private health care, you can go get it. There's private for-profit hospitals all across Canada. There really is. And you can go get healthcare in Canada if you got money. Anywhere. Because there's for-profit hospitals in every province. WCB has a couple. Geez. But yes, people do pay for healthcare with their tax money. Education, too. Infrastructure. All kinds of things. You know what? Again, people... I know. I agree. And I gladly pay taxes so we can get more doctors. But you know what we have to do? We have to start not charging people so much to go to university. And it shouldn't, you know, it shouldn't cost somebody $100,000 to become a doctor. It really shouldn't. It shouldn't cost anybody that kind of money to get an education so that they can take care of people, right? No, you're right. But, you know, the thing is, the minute you start saying subsidies, conservatives lose their minds. It doesn't matter on what level. And even in Jen, it doesn't matter on what level. But again, because we're talking about Ontario politics too, you need to go into your municipality and find out who your MPP is and what your MPP is wanting to do for your communities. Do you need a new school? How long are your hospital stays in your community? What's your mayors and your city councils doing? Is your MPP working with your city councils to make sure that they're going into Queen's Park and telling, you know, whoever is at the top what they need? Because your MPPs are your representatives. So don't worry about Doug Ford per se and Bonnie Crombie. Who's the person best for you and who's the best person for your municipality riding? Oil companies? What does oil companies have to do with an Ontario election? Of course they are. They don't mind subsidizing oil companies. Oh, that's what you said. Sorry, I missed that comment. I'm sorry. But but I mean, and then conservatives get mad when we give student loan relief, and lose their minds over student loan. Even giving student loans was a thing. Oh my God, you're gonna fund people to go to school on a loan? Oh God, grants and bursaries. Oh my God, right? So again, when it comes to that kind of thing, you have to remind yourself too what province you're in. So again, we're talking about the province or the Ontario Provincial Election, which is tomorrow. And I actually do a podcast with a friend of mine. He lives in just outside of Campbellford, Ontario. I have friends that live in Belleville, Ontario, Peterborough, Ontario, and I'm hearing because the advanced polling was like 6%. Everybody's like, holy moly, like that's really low. Because usually advanced polling. But I'm hearing inherently that Ontarians don't usually vote. Municipally, provincially, federally they do. Federally, I guess you guys go out in droves. But when it comes to actual provincial voting, y'all stay home. Like, why? You have a voice. And you really need to quit being apathetic about voting on every level, whether it's municipal, whether it's provincial, or whether it's federal. Because if you don't speak up, it's complacency. You then just don't really care about what, Well, if that's what your opinion is, Justin, that's fine. You're totally entitled to have that. Why? Why would you vote for Doug Ford? Why don't you come up and tell us why you'd vote for Doug Ford then? And what he's done for you. What has he done to make your life better? What has he done to make your life more affordable? Because when you're all screaming about, oh my God, JT, blah, blah, it's not on him about affordability, housing, healthcare, or education. It's on this guy. Justin's gone. Get over it. He retired, and he's probably one of the best prime ministers we've ever had. He's done more for First Nations people ever, and he's lowered taxes and given all kinds of benefits and fed you while you were, off work during COVID. So I don't want to hear it. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but exactly. Everything people complain about is provincial. Your healthcare is provincial. You don't have a good enough wage? That's provincial too. Municipal or your minimum wages are all provincial. I'll take you to America if you like. I'll drive you to the border. Right, smash. Oh my gosh. Okay, Angela, you can unblock and mic yourself if you want to have something to say.
Hi.
Oh, I know who you are. Come on, Angela. How you doing? Sorry, I didn't see your picture. I'm just seeing. I didn't see your face, so now I know. Welcome back. You were up the last time. You were just. They were kind of wrapping up. You were right in the middle of saying something. So why don't you start out with kind of what you were saying in the last end of things?
Oh, I mean about the
We're
privatization
talking
of
about healthcare.
healthcare? Yeah.
Yeah, and disability, and that's the
Yeah.
thing too, OSDP, and how that's and how that affects with the cost of living, and what is it, not even $1,800 a month for somebody living on disability when rents are like $2,000 a month for one bedroom in downtown
Yeah.
Toronto. Like, how is that even livable, right? But go
I mean,
ahead.
even for myself, because I have a son who's on the spectrum and he's in a group home. And there's an insecurity right now because the Ministry of Children, Youth, and Social Services has closed down, not closed down personally, but what they do is they cut funding. And when they cut funding, that means that the group home can't operate, and therefore we've had Jake's house actually who's closed down as a
I
result.
saw that. That was heartbreaking.
You know,
There's people that have been living there for a long time, and
yeah,
they're adult people with disabilities. We're not talking children. We're talking people like that are in their like 30s and 40s that are adult with
yeah.
autism, right? Their parents are in their 80s and they're having to figure out. I saw that. It was just that broke my heart because that's a complete breakdown of healthcare. But again, like why? Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, that's obviously maybe it's a personal one, but no, it affects everyone. There's so many issues happening in to the most vulnerable people here in Ontario, and they don't have a voice. And this is why we have to be their voice. And by being their voice is by going out and voting.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you're
that's,
absolutely right.
yeah. And also the fact that I've had 11 years of representation, which is conservative, for the last 11 years, and I have never received any kind of representation. So I'm looking for a change here in Ontario.
Right. And again, I don't like it's, you don't have to say where you are, but you know, have you spoken with the person, the people that are your MPP, right? Because those are the people that you really have to go to, right? And if you're not going and really looking into who's representing your community, and again, your city council too, because if they're not working with that, like we call them MLAs here in British Columbia, which is an MPP out there, right? Same
Yeah.
thing. We had an election here, and this in our area, it's progressively conservative. So I feel like I'm never represented. It doesn't matter because they say, oh yeah, but they don't, conservatives inherently don't represent everybody. They represent the people that vote for them, but they don't represent the people that don't vote for them, which are usually the disabled, the LGBTQS communities, people that are marginalized, people that are low income, don't normally vote conservative because they're voting against their best interests, right? And usually the conservatives get in, so the people that are marginalized, low income, disabled are not represented in Queen's Park ever.
Exactly. I mean, I've been advocating for over 23 years, not just for my son, but for others with disabilities, intellectual and physical disabilities. And I can't reveal any information other than saying there's a lot of concerns and issues that are happening, and we've been trying our very best to represent so many, and we haven't been able to do this since 2018 under this government.
No, I
And
know. Well, it's kind of funny too because I was looking at things. There's actually 142 vacant seats in Ontario that are not seats that are actually filled by any party representation at all. So that means there's 142 ridings in that vast province that have absolutely no representation at all.
oh yeah,
There's
and
no
yeah,
candidate. There's nobody there to represent them. And it doesn't, I didn't get into dwelling because, like I said, I just kind of was looking this up quickly. But that leaves a vast population of you probably rural, I'm assuming, rural Ontario that's not representative. North Bay, Thunder Bay, all the rural up to, to the,
yeah, exactly.
all around that area, Hudson Bay, right? So of all those Indigenous people, because a lot of that area too would be Indigenous,
Yeah,
they've got no representation. So there's nobody in
exactly.
those ridings. 142 empty seats.
Exactly.
That's kind of incredible, to be honest.
It's horrific, is what it is.
But it's really
It's
hard. Like I
really,
don't like when I think about being a politician, especially in this virtual time. I've actually worked on 3 campaigns in British Columbia here, and for the Liberal Party federally, and they have been the most horrific. I've seen the worst people ever. It has been. They were not. Yeah. So I don't blame people for not wanting to get into politics, especially if you're a woman, because our candidate here was a woman, and I've never been so disgusted in the men in this area in my life than I was then.
I mean, I
So for
attempted to
these two
run for,
women to be standing up, because you've got 2 women candidates, Bonnie Crombie, who was the mayor of what was it, Mississauga, I guess it was, right?
yeah,
And Merritt Stiles, who's NDP, and they're both women standing up to run for the premier of Ontario. I give them kudos. I give them kudos. I give every woman. I give anybody. I'm not just saying women. I give anybody who stands up to do public service a huge kudos because in this day and age, especially with the orange potato that we got in the U.S., no matter who we are in this country, we're all a little on edge about that.
oh, of course we are. He keeps changing his mind every 2 minutes. First he says it's March, now he says it's April. Like, what the heck's going on here?
He's
He,
got dementia. He's
I'm
got dementia.
glad,
The orange potato's
honestly,
losing, the thick potato is losing his mind.
but people are losing their jobs now as a result.
I know everybody is. It's absolutely unbelievable that they can justify laying off 40,000 people.
I know.
Like that's a lot of people to be like unemployment. Do you forget about the economy? How those people that get paid that put the money back into the economy that buy stuff to make things in restaurants that are like, do they have enough unemployment to do that? Honey, can you put him outside because he's screaming to go outside right now? Sorry, my dog's screaming. My husband's like, what do I do with him? Throw him outside. my big guy, he always wants to be like on, like,
Oh, that's
but
cute.
yeah, like it's just kind of ridiculous when I was reading those stats too, and that the highest unemployment rates are in Windsor, Ontario. Where isn't Windsor, Ontario supposed to be where all the cars that are being
Yeah,
built and all the
yeah,
automotive
exactly.
going on
And there's
and all
yeah.
the steel industry is going. So what happened to the steel industry then?
Well, look at because I live in the the city that I live in. That's where I can just say it's Delco anyway. So, anyways, they've actually lost contracts and they're laying off people, right?
Is that just recently since the January 20th thing going
Since
on?
the with the tariffs and everything.
So this is just recently then. Because
Yeah,
this was stats from January. January 2025 was and so we're into February now. So yeah, it was 7.6% overall in Ontario.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
talking about how the tariffs are now affecting,
Yeah.
jobs or
Well,
like,
the thing is, they're preempting that these tariffs are even going to happen.
I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you know, like I say, well, this isn't the same Trump that you were dealing with 4 years ago. He's different now. He's got an agenda. He's going ahead with all these things. Okay, well, that's great and fine and dandy, but he keeps changing his mind. Is he actually going to go ahead with these tariffs? Is he waiting to see who's going to be the leader? Is he waiting to see if we're going into an election? And again, he's got his hands in so many pies and so many things going on. He's got this going on. They got booms over here,
And
deals here, deals there, deals everywhere. It looks like to me. I get up every day and it's like it's the Donald Trump show.
I know. I know. But the thing is, I'm concerned that you're right, that he's doing this because of the federal election. He wants to see who's in before he
Well,
makes
and
the
the thing
decision.
what it's doing too is it's destabilizing the stock
Yeah.
market.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah,
he
that's another
gets
thing.
up and he
Sorry.
changes his mind. The stock market goes this way. The stock market, the TMX goes here. The DX goes this way. And then the Chinese are going, ha ha ha! Look at us go. We got Chinese steel. We got beams for you. Don't worry, Canada. We got your back, right? And then Trump's over there, it's getting to, like I said, but in Ontario, where they do a lot of steel building, right? They get the coal and stuff from our mountains out here because they're ripping ours down like 90. They got new coal mines going in, building them. But the thing is, we got Australian investment that came into Alberta with the grassy mines. They're trying to, like, Kenny said no, they weren't going to do them. They were going to shut them down. Now, the Australian company's suing the Alberta government because they broke the contract. And so now they're letting the mine go ahead, but they're not saying that. So now there's a bunch of other people that got the Alberta government back in court trying to stop this mine again. But this is all supposed to be for but again, Trudeau actually invested in the coal mine for clean steel,
Yeah.
right? So that we could produce our own clean steel for our own projects. And that was supposed to be going on in Ontario. Where is it?
It's not.
Where's the deal? Where's that deal that him and Ford had going? Because I know it was all on Ford to get this, project going. Him and but it was some, clean steel coal, deal that they had. What happened to that?
Nothing. He doesn't support it. That's the bottom line. He doesn't support it. Just like we have carbon tax here. Why do we have carbon tax here? Because of Doug Ford.
Well, you know what happened with that? Actually, that was a conservative thing. That was Harper that said, hey, we need to implement a carbon tax. You provinces,
Exactly.
back to the provinces, right? You provinces, this is data from Star Trek. You provinces do what you want with it, and then we'll figure it out. It was 2008. So BC implemented a carbon tax. Alberta did nothing because they're going, I ain't doing nothing. We're the oil capital. We've always been the oil capital. We're not doing anything about oil. We're going to fucking... And then there's Scott Moe next to him going, no. Okay, I'll just do what you do. And the conservatives next door were just as stupid, just like, bleh, right, when it came to that. So, and then the Ontario government, I believe it was 8 was that? 08, was that when?
Yeah, after we win.
They put
After we
the
win.
cap
Yeah.
and trade on, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as what's his nuts Ford got in, he took the cap and trade off. That actually is what implemented. And then I think one of the other provinces pulled their cap and trade off too. That's what implemented the federal government, because the Conservatives have it in legislation that there has to be some sort of carbon form
Yeah, of course.
whatever, how do you say that word I'm thinking of? The carbon capture. So they have to be capturing carbon in some form. And that was a legislation that was put in by the conservative government prior to this one. So the legislation goes forward. The legislations don't just disappear when Harper disappeared. They're legislations. So the provinces either had to do something or the federal government was going to do something. So they put the carbon tax in. Everybody went, nah! But they got money in their fucking pocket. Excuse my
But
French.
then they
They
always
got,
want to
except for
blame.
British Columbia. Except for
Hmm.
people in British Columbia and people that have, like, that already had a carbon tax already, like us. We haven't seen a dime of that carbon rebate. But everybody in Alberta is crying their faces off, yet they're stuffing money in their pockets.
You see, I know it's like,
Right?
I know,
Yeah, right. We're stuffing money in our pockets, but fuck Trudeau.
I know.
We got our
I think,
taxes lowered and our daycare's costing us less. We can buy more beer, but fuck Trudeau. Like, you know, we had this, like, in town here, we had this woman got caught, like, irregularly, like, okay, she poached a deer. They poached it. They outright poached this deer. They went and they hid the carcass. They hid the hide. They cut the antlers up into little, and then you got somebody on there saying, oh, they made a mistake. You made a mistake by cutting, because it was 4-point season. It was a 3-point. You killed the 3-point. You cut up the horns. You hid the hide. And then you're saying this is a good person that just made a mistake. Pardon? If that's how you think, then oh my. So it's okay as you're cutting that thing up, going, fuck the regulations. Fuck Trudeau. You know, as you're stuffing this deer in your freezer, right? Because why follow any rules?
I mean, because there's so much
Alberta
misinformation.
doesn't pay the bills. You know what, honey badger there, dear? Canada's not carbon negative. We've got a really good, clean oil and gas. We do, because my husband actually works in it. So I'm not talking out my ass. I know a lot about the oil and gas fields, but Alberta does not pay the bills. In fact, Canadian taxpayers pay for that beautiful pipeline that goes from Edmonton all the way to Tidewaters in Vancouver now. And that little, you know, government's collecting over, you know, $2 million a month in oil royalties. Where's that money going? To the First Nations where it belongs? Because that money should be going and filtering right back to the First Nations and the treaties and the peoples that walked here before us. But no, the Alberta government's stuffing that money, extorting that money. Who knows what she's doing with that money? She's buying tickets to Oilers games, or getting, you know, who knows? Because there's all kinds of side deals and corruption, and Danielle Smith's doing what she wants. And I believe Doug Ford is probably holding her up on one side going, need some more ideas? Just saying.
But it's true, though. You know, there's similarity in a lot of what Danielle Smith is doing and Doug Ford are doing.
Yeah, because they're corrupt as hell.
Yeah.
And that's because they're elite people. These are people that have never known what it's like to have to use a food bank. These are people that have never known what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. These are people, like, where it goes, why don't you run for, you know, I don't have $250,000 to throw at an election.
I know.
Do you know that people that run for, like, that, you know, the leadership have to have $350,000 just to sign up? That's
know.
not the songs. That's not the campaigning. That's not the road trips, the fuel, running around to every, never mind leaving your family on the sidelines going, see you, Mom.
I know.
It's a hard life. It's a hard job, and it costs a lot of money. So when you think these people are, you know, but again, they're not like us. They're not us. There's none of them are. Unless you've got bucks in your pocket and a lot of investment behind you, you will never get into politics.
Well, of course, because, I mean, I ran for city council. So with city council, I mean, doing that alone is tough, and it's hard. Can you imagine running for an MPP, right? And you put in addition on all the money that you have to for that position, right?
Well,
and then
$5,000, and there's actually caps now. Like, you can't take any more than $1,200 from any family member as a donation. I think it's $1,000 actually from any family member or friend. You're not allowed to take any more than a certain amount of money from any, and there's no corporate donations. And to run as an MP for Liberal now, you have to have so many hours phone banking and so many hours door knocking. They don't want just any Joe off the street coming and saying, hey, I'll be your candidate. In fact, out here, we have no candidate because I can't find anybody that's willing to apparently the last candidate's son was, you know, and I said to his brother today, I said, no, he's not a candidate, and I would not endorse him, nor would I even like. We don't even have a board. We haven't had an AGM, so don't tell me about having a candidate here. We haven't had a candidate since the last one lost and resigned.
Wow.
This is very conservative. Even our MLA now is a conservative. Before we had, well, they called themselves the BC Liberals. They were never liberals. Even like when Christy Clark said she was going to run for the Liberal Party, I went, she's not a liberal. Like, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. And so yeah, that was that. But yeah, wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And that's what I mean. You have to be careful with wondering what about the green belt? What about what is done to healthcare? What about the old folks' homes? What about the seniors' care in Ontario, right? Again, these are questions you have to ask yourselves when you're going to the polls. Like, how old are you? Are you going to be going into senior care in the next 5 years? Do your parents going into senior care? Do you want to have to pay out of pocket for that senior care for your folks, right? What if you're going to be disabled? What if you get hurt at work? What's your WCB standards in Ontario? Like, these are questions you have to be asking yourselves. But again, MPP, not because you're not voting directly for Doug Ford. You're not voting directly for Barney Crombie. You're not voting for,
It's true, though. And that's the problem is that they don't look at these things. You think, oh, I've got stability right now because I'm working. But honestly, anything, unfortunately, anything can happen, right? There is no stability.
Exactly. If the tariffs go in and you got conservatives in and you need workers' relief,
Yeah.
Ford's not going to bend over and help. They were the ones fighting the COVID payments.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want to pay anybody $2,000 a month to live on in Canada, which is nothing. Most people's rent's that. That's not food. $2,000 a month is your rent. That's not food, lights, gas, nothing. And even in my little town out here in bumfuck British Columbia, population 20,000, a one-bedroom apartment is $1,800. Why? Because corporations came in and bought everything up. They have shareholders. Those shareholders have to show profit. Those profits all have to come out of your rent. And that's what we were taught in the Gen X era when I was growing up. We were told that buy a house and then buy a house for your retirement. We were told to do this. There was a show on TV, flip this house, flip that house, flipping houses, make your money flipping houses. Now we flip so many houses that people don't have houses.
Well, that's what happened. Okay, that's true, though. I remember this is maybe a little bit off, but I remember when my mom passed away and we sold her house in 2022. And so we put it on the market. And at that time, you know how the prices were extremely high?
Yeah.
People were like bidding, there's a bidding war and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And so eventually we lowered the price and someone bought our parents' house, right? So therefore, 6 months later, because I ran for office at that time, so I was there a lot and in that area. And I noticed that who bought the house never moved in the house, but they were renovating the house. And within 6 months, I drove by, and that house was up for sale.
Yeah,
So
because that's what we're doing. I have friends that bought a house for their daughter. Their daughter decided that they didn't want the house. She didn't want the house. They rented it to a friend of theirs. Well, now they want to retire and sell both their houses and move away. Well, that's fine and dandy, but now you're going to put your best friend into a house because he can't afford to buy it because he's been paying you rent, so he doesn't have a down payment. He's been paying your mortgage for you, pretty much. Now you've got a house you can sell and walk away with like three times what you paid for it. And you're going to leave your friend on the street. And how many people are doing that? Like, they call them, renovictions. But how many people rent that house to somebody say, "Oh, stay there forever"? Been there. "Oh, make this your home. We're never gonna sell it. Make it do whatever you want here." 3 years later, they're fucking selling the place, and you're
I know. There's so much insecurity in our rental market.
You want it for investment. It's their income.
Yeah.
It's not. And they always tell you, and this is one thing that people will tell you that rent. That's never your home. You don't own it. It's not yours. It's rental. You don't own any of it. So don't ever make anywhere you live your home so you never have stability. How fair is that to anybody? Anywhere. Across this country. But when you vote for this, that's what you get. You get complete instability.
I know. I've known so many people my friends who've actually been renting, and they've been asked to leave under these apparent reasons as, oh, a family member is moving in. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's
you
a
don't have to leave. You do not have to leave. You can fight that in the Ontario Tribunal. But they're so scared that they rush out of it, and then they're looking for another place to live, and they're paying more money. And not only that, but then one particular case where a friend of mine moved out, and she had to take another place to live, and her place is more money now, and the place that she was renting, where the individual said that they were gonna, a family member was gonna move in, it was never rented out. And know that legally they can't do that.
No, they can't. They absolutely can't. And
No,
that's the thing. Like they people lie,
of
right?
course
And
they
they
do.
tell you one thing, and you have no repercussions.
I
Like,
know.
what are you gonna do? Like, you've already packed up your stuff. You've already moved out. The house is sitting empty. It gets renovated. They sell it again, and they've told you one thing. But what do you get to do about it? You're the one that's having to go out and find a place to live, or if
I
you can
know.
even find a place to live. And then this is another good one. Let's blame it on immigration. Let's blame it on bringing people to Canada. No, we never had enough housing to begin with. There's
I know.
always been a supply and demand. When I moved to Calgary from Lethbridge, Alberta, in 1989, right was right around the Olympics, I guess. Right after the Olympics. I guess it was 88. It was during the Olympics. The vacancy rate then was 0%. When I moved here back in 1992, the vacancy rate here was 0%.
Yeah,
We moved to Lethbridge in 81, the vacancy rate was 0%. This is not a
mhm.
new problem. You just got social media and people flapping their faces about it and crying about it because there's houseless people. Well, guess what? Some of those houseless people want to be houseless too.
I know.
And that's the thing, you can't change that. Right? The cities are growing up, but these people don't want to be enclosed in an apartment building, and if they do, they destroy it anyway.
That's true though.
You know, like I said, basically, bottom end, we've got to end poverty. And the only way you end poverty is through universal income. And because, well, how are you
Hmm.
going to pay for that?
I know. That's true.
You're sorry for our government being such an embarrassment. Well, we appreciate that because, yeah, well, all we have to say is try us. But again, like, you know, if Canada did a universal income benefit, okay, let's break it down. Right now, disability across Canada for anybody on disability is under $2,000. During
Yeah.
COVID, they paid everybody $2,000. If you're on unemployment, you know, you're living on OSDP, whatever, you know, all kinds of different things, right? You take all that out. So right now, we already know that income, like welfares and all these things, are easily, and you know, unemployment, for example. I know people right now collecting unemployment but making money cash under the table. Okay, that's fraud. No matter how you slice it, if you're making cash under the table when you're on unemployment, whether you pay into unemployment, yes, that's your money, and you're more than entitled to it. But you're still taking cash under the table. You're fucking your neighbor, right? Because it's not the government you're screwing. You're screwing your tax-paying, hard-working neighbor because you're frauding. So what a universal income benefit would actually do is take out all of those too. So there would be no unemployment. There would be no OSDP. There would be no or income support. There would be no all of these other benefits. You get your $2,000 a month, which would be your income, but then you could also get a little job. And right now, if you're on OSDP or anything, you can only make a certain amount of money a year or per month, and then they start clawing it back. Well, if you're able to make money like over that $2,000, now it's yours. That would maybe give you the ability to get a better apartment or into a car because nobody's clawing your money back. And again, then you're automatically given like Blue Cross health coverage, right? So you're not losing out on your health benefits either, but it gets rid of all those other tax-paying pulls like OSDP for provincial, unemployment
Hmm.
for federal. You know, you still want to keep CPP because you want to have a pension plan for people, right?
Yeah.
So you want to keep the CPP. But again, if you take all these things out that cost the government taxpayers money, that gives that rolls right back into UBI. There's absolutely no any pull on that would actually save the taxpayers trillions of dollars. Never mind the income that comes in provincially for all our sin taxes, for cigarettes, and alcohol, and MJ, and all these things. I could keep saying, where's the taxation money for that?
I
It's
know for a fact, yeah, it's true. You know why? Because here in Ontario, we had, the basic income, right? The
yep.
basic income here. And as soon as Doug Ford came in, he automatically got rid of it. So I met people that were actually in it because I was helping protesting with Cornerstone at that time. And I met somebody who was on it, and she was actually making so many improvements to her life. She can go back to school. She was a single mom, and she had all these potential, everything in front of her. And when he just canceled her just like that, she lost everything. So now it's between, do I have to go back onto Ontario Works, right? Even though she had a disability, she still had to go Ontario Works. What is that exactly? Why
Yeah.
do we are we forcing people to go onto these systems and we can be improving their lives by having some kind of basic income, like something that is stability, so that you're not ending up in situations like that. We wouldn't have to rely on these services.
That's right. Those services would no longer have to exist, right? And again, like,
Exactly.
and again, if you weren't working, like right now, I know with inflation, it's like $2,000 isn't a lot of money, but I mean, it's better than it would. And if you're working, for myself personally, it would pay my mortgage, right? It
Yeah.
would pay maybe my mortgage and my gas bill. It would still wouldn't make it so that I couldn't work. There's no way I could live on $2,000 because I make more than that working now as it is, and I make a little more than minimum wage. But everybody's complaining about, oh, I can't make my bills. Then you need to find a better job, or you need to get your boss to give you a raise. And I'm sorry that your premier in Alberta has not been able to raise your minimum wage for you, because minimum wage in British Columbia right now is $17.85. Minimum
Wow.
wage.
That's minimum wage.
That's minimum wage in British Columbia.
Holy
Seventeen
cow,
dollars and
that's
85
low.
cents, right? So I
That's
don't know. Like I said, but again, your premiers all take. That's all
yeah,
provincial jurisdiction,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it is.
So again, if you're not in British Columbia, or, I don't know what the minimum wage is in Ontario, but again, cost of living too, right? Which is so it's so expensive to live in British Columbia, only because the cities moved here and made it that way.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hey, yeah, I was gonna, not to
Yeah.
sound
First of all,
stupid,
stop. Age and location, please.
19 and from Wisconsin.
Okay.
So, not to sound stupid, but could you explain to me Canadian politics? Because over here, they never talk about it. They'll like glaze over, like, I don't know, the tariff going on with this stupid tariff deal they're trying to do and all this other stuff.
If you're
But
in Wisconsin, so you're pretty close to our border, right?
yeah,
So geographically, you're right underneath Ontario, and
yeah,
the tariffs would actually affect you probably more than us. So our government is a social democracy. It's run in a Westminster Parliament, which is a parliament system out of the UK from Britain originally, right? So when we had our constitution and made our parliament together, we became a social democracy. What a social democracy is we have a parliament which has a prime minister. We have a parliament holds 334 seats, which is broken into 334 ridings across our country that actually has MPs that are voted for, that then whoever has the most seats actually forms government. So it's a little different from what you've got. We do have a Senate, but the Senate is only kind of it's not a figurehead. They're appointed, but the Liberals actually left theirs all independent. We have Conservatives, and what they do is, once a legislation, which is kind of like a law for you, legislations are passed, they're voted on in the House. Then they go to the Senate for royal assent, and if they don't like it, they tweak it, and it goes back, and then there's more debates and stuff, and it goes back. But the Senate's kind of not like it's not like your Senate. But we have yeah, it's a little bit different. We don't have a king, that's for sure. We did have a king, but then we got our sovereignty away from the UK, and we have figureheads like the Governor General, but she's pretty much just more or less a figurehead. She does um, have the connections between the monarchy, but we are independent from the monarchy.
all right. So it's a bit similar, but just a bit different in how the legislature works, or
Right.
how
Yeah,
like
and your states are like our provinces. We only have 13 provinces, and you have 50 states.
oh, yeah. So wait, so that means then that those 13 provinces have more political power than, like, whereas they have like more senators, or more like people
Right.
to vote on in there. Okay.
Right. They hold the jurisdictions over our healthcare, our education, our liquor control, our marijuana control boards, all that kind of thing. Everything federally. Federally is basically regulatory, unemployment, and sending money transfers to the provinces.
So in terms of like politics, with like which parties are like the progressive? You got like here, it's like you have the Democrats, you got the Republicans, but then you have other subsidiaries of people that vote based on that. Whereas there, it's like you have like actual. It's not just a two-party system over there. You have like multiple parties, as far as I'm aware.
We have
But
110 parties in Canada, but actually there's only 5 that actually sit in legislation. And that's because they're the ones that are able to get seats. But anybody can run. You can run independently in any federal election in your riding, as long as you have a certain amount of signatures, money. Like you can, as long as Elections Canada, you complete Election Canada's forms and follow all Election Canada's rules. Anybody can run in Canada.
oh wow, is it not like where is it not like the Electoral College where it's like each province has to have.
No,
Is it so you
no.
could? Is it like a direct democracy then? So like one vote equals one person.
Yeah.
Wow, man, I wish we could have that over here.
And then people want proportional voting, which means that they want to have the ability to have other parties that sit in parliament, and we kind of do, but we pretty much have like the 4 parties that 5 parties that actually always sit in parliament. So the Conservatives would be like your Republicans, and our Liberals are kind of more like your Democrats. Our NDP are more social left leaning, so you don't really have a party. Like Bernie Sanders is more what NDP would be, more progressive, right? Like Bernie Sanders is more the NDP kind of, and then the Greens are Greens. They're like even farther left. Like they've got more climate change based policies, that
Yeah.
kind of along the lines of environmentally, and like they've got different climate economic plans and stuff too, but again policies are different, and they're a little more farther left than that too. So
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would be part of the NDP or the Green Party at this point. But yeah, I
okay,
mean,
Shania, first of all, I don't know who you are. So you can, like, I don't know what you think you might be able to add to the conversation, but you're more than welcome to come up, but I don't know you. So
Hi,
just give
I'm
me a
Shania
second.
from Alberta. I am 29, just fresh.
Okay, stop right there. We're having a conversation with the other dude right now. So please mute your mics until we're ready to bring you in, and then I will let them in, okay? Trudy, just give them me a sec, because I don't like having them just kind of popping in like that. So thanks, though. That's okay. Okay, so finish saying what you were saying there, Dr. Fruit Snack.
I was. What was I mentioning a little bit? I
They're
was.
talking
But
about the part, like how Parliament kind of works, and each province is like you're like you guys also have like counties and wards and stuff, and we don't really like do have counties and
yeah, ours is a
we don't
weird
have
thing.
sheriffs that are vote like we don't vote for our sheriffs and our deputies, like we don't have that kind of thing going on here either.
Yeah, we have like it's a little complicated, but we have a system where it's like we have the very very local elections. We're talking like cities, towns, villages, little things like that.
And we have
Then you move on
and
to like the
territories and
county
yeah,
elections, and then those
yeah,
move on to the county elections. You move on to the state elections,
yep.
and then those state election. Then you have the federal elections, which
Yeah,
are like
it's pretty similar to what we have here too. We have municipal elections too. What we're talking about today is the Ontario Provincial Election. So that's what this is, a 24-hour kind of like election connection for the Ontario election, because Ontario, the province of Ontario, is having an election.
big,
So
yeah,
they
because
have
then
different
Justin
parties. They have the
Trudeau.
same. Sorry.
Because didn't Justin Trudeau just say he was like done, sort of in this way of
Okay,
speak?
this has got nothing to do with Justin Trudeau. This is a provincial election. This has got absolutely nothing to do with him.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I got. But yeah,
It's okay.
so
It's okay, but like you said, you don't know if you're from this state, you don't understand. I get it, but this has got nothing to do with JT. And yes, he did resign, but he's still standing up for our country and fighting against the orange potato, which is your guy, and standing up and
my
fighting
bad. I
against
wish I could have.
tariffs. And
I voted
and
against him, but everyone else didn't.
well,
Which,
that's good. I'm glad you did, because we all did. If we could have too, we would have. But
yeah. So
Okay, well,
was it for the?
I'm gonna let you stop there. I'm gonna let Shania have a word here, because she's been anxious to come up, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, Dr. Fruit Snack?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Okay, Shania, go ahead and meet your mic and introduce yourself. Tell us how old you are and where you come from.
Hi, I'm Shania from Alberta, which is above Montana, and I'm 29. I just turned 29 exactly a week ago. I just want to quickly pop on and just also mention to Dr. Fruit Snack or whatever your name is that we have a interesting different kind of system also. We have shorter election cycles here in Canada, which you probably have like 564 days, whatever, from the time that it happens to another day, whatever. So, Ontario literally needs to do the right thing and vote for a certain person to get out. I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to give them more power than they should. So, yeah.
What Ontarians need to do is actually get out and vote. Period. Like I said, when you see the advance poll sitting at 6%, that's horrifying. But I know, like when I was talking to some of my friends, like my producers and stuff tonight out in Ontario, they plan on voting tomorrow. So a lot of people plan on going out and voting tomorrow when tomorrow is election day. So let's just hope the lineups are long and that people are standing in them for a long time and hope that it doesn't snow or rain. And yes, you're right. If you are undecided right now, smartvoting.ca is where you want to go to look up and see who you in your riding, who will be the best person for that area. We don't want to be vote splitting. And again, tapping is clapping. And please try and keep up with my loud mouth. Go ahead, Ange.
Okay. I'll pass the mic back to you, Angela. I love your shirt, by the way.
Hi. So, because I live in Ontario, so I guess my main concern is our healthcare system, our educational system, affordable housing, and hospitals as well. We have a tendency to forget about that, because the provincial government does have responsibility. And in fact, your premiers have a huger responsibility, and people don't see that because we have jurisdiction, right? So federal only deals with federal, and provincial only deals with provincial, right? And so there's this misconception when some people go to the polls, they have a tendency to look at federal issues in provincial, and that's why we need more education and more information going out there so people that understand the difference. And when you're voting, you're actually voting in for a representative, and that's the main thing.
Well, I think the thing of it is too is I think people are comfortable. It's winter time. They've got, Ford's kind of sitting pretty where, he's got the numbers looking pretty good in the polls. And, but again, like, how pretty are you sitting? Everybody's crying about affordability, inflation, and housing crisis and all these things. And, oh my God, F. Trudeau! It's not his fault.
I know.
Like, you guys really need to, like, sit back on your heels. Okay, yeah, the mandates for, COVID. He didn't invent COVID. He didn't expect for that K-19 to be coming forward. He was a 43-year-old man trying to deal with a world pandemic. I like to see you go do that. And then you're all crying about masks and crying about this. But you took the $2,000 a month, though, didn't you? And you sat in your horns, honk, honk, let's go cash that check. Like, seriously, like, and now you even want to talk about the 51st state? Whoa. Just because Ford's running around saying number 51, he didn't cancel Starlink. He went and waffled it right back in.
Yeah. That's true, though.
All of them. Everything that they want to blame the federal government for. Again, federal governments are to regulate and send money and fight with, the idiot across the Timu Trump across the aisle with all his BS and his axe this, axe that. He was right there holding Harper's hand when they put that and implemented that legislation in. He also cut housing by $800 million and told First Nations to go get jobs.
Yes, that's true. Horrific. That was absolutely horrific.
So, like, don't even get me started because, I'm old enough that I've sat through, and I was 15 years old when Brian Mulroney signed the free trade agreement. Okay? My mother was working as a federal employee at that point in time. They started clawing back their pensions by 30%. The military's pensions at the Gulf War level. Because we were in the middle of a Gulf War back then too, right? The Persian Islands, when our guys were down there getting blown up and their legs blown off, right? And then we had a really bad... And then all of a sudden Paul Martin came in and saved all Canadians money. We still had a war going on. And then we had 9/11. And then Chrétien told them to go. They weren't sending any troops. And then Harper went and sent them. And we lost 135 men that, over that period of time. They sent our boys in with military equipment from World War II into Afghanistan. And you want to talk about cutting and not funding our military? I'm sorry, but please. But a conservative, all they do is cut, cut, cut.
Yep.
No matter what.
Well, I mean that's going on too. They just passed a budget resolution where they're trying to cut Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and food stamps.
And
So
funded off the backs of their, let's like the UK, coming in and putting up their military and then taking it off the back of aid. And then USA just got shut down, which is, unrun all of the money that's going to feed people in the third world. And everybody says we should quit sending our money to the other countries. We need it for ourselves. And the crap that they pull, and then where's the money going to go? So if you've cut all these funds and you're saving all this money, where is it?
Exactly.
Because nothing ever changes. Nothing ever changes for the people. Nothing ever gets better for the people. The government just says they make money and they're saving money and they balance a budget, but they never change anything for the people.
It's horrific what's happening in America, by the way. I understand what you're saying. We're paying attention over here, and I'm really sorry about that.
yeah.
We do. We're terrified, to be fair.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I was always talking about it and telling everybody, oh, look, this is what's going on and this is what's going on, and they didn't listen. And nothing going on, so I'm just watching in the find out phase now.
But you
That
got to keep talking about it, and that's how you keep raising awareness. Is you got to keep talking to your friends and family about it. You got to keep raising awareness, because the minute that you don't, that means you're complacent, and then you're doing your part. As long as you're talking to your friends and neighbors and trying to be compassionate and be an ally to anybody who needs it, you're doing your part.
Thank you.
You have huge info. Well, I don't see anybody. I don't see anything. Hi, host. Okay, well, first of all, I don't know who the hell you are. And all I see is nothing. I don't see anybody in here except for myself, Angela, Dr. Fruit6, and Mrs. Radical. And we're all part of the team, and she's got herself paused. So I'm not seeing any guest requests there, bud.
Oops.
I don't know why you can't. I have no idea.
He has to request. So if he can look down and there's
You
a
can
little,
see as much as I can see, and I don't see anything.
no, there's
There's a
none.
button with guests.
He has to press the guest button with 2 people in the check mark, and then it will request, and then we can just figure out, but it's not showing that you're requesting, so
Right.
that's not really on us if that's a TikTok problem or if that's a you problem. I'm not sure.
What sounds like a you problem? All right, so I do have notes, because I knew it was going to be 3 hours of this. So, what else did I have in here? Oh yeah, so let's talk about the Toronto's mayor, Olivia Chow.
Okay.
So I think Olivia Chow is kind of wonderful. I think that she's actually doing a fairly good job for Toronto. What do you think?
I think she has. I think she's
standing up against Ford.
Exactly. But she's done a lot for the city itself. And she stands up for a lot of things against what's his name, Doug Ford. Like, if she sees something that she disagrees with, she stands up to him, and I like that in a mayor. I don't like a mayor that's just folding in to whatever your premier says.
Right. Again, she has a lot of political background, a lot of experience, right? Being she was Jack Layton's wife, and did work within federal politics for many years. I like the fact that she actually has been standing up for housing and houseless people, right, and really pushing the federal government for housing finance, so financial help, and pushing the federal government for financial help too, right? Because again, when you need funds and grants and money from for these kind of things, you have to go to the right avenues, and you have to go and write the grants and have a grant writer writing, because you can get money through grants and bursaries and loans and all kinds of things through the provincial and federal government for your municipality. If you have a mayor and a council that give a shit, and if you have an MPP or an MLA that are working with them hand in hand, right? And it's one thing for me, is one of my biggest pet peeves about here is that we need a new high school in our town. And we haven't gotten it. I've been banging on about it for 10 years and nobody's paying attention, right? And they say, oh, it's top priority. Now the top priority is getting a new mine, bus or something, right? Like, when you get a conservative in here, they don't give a crap about school anymore, right?
That's true, because the municipal city I live in, we've been advocating and, with the city council, and to get things, improvements made in the area that I live in. And I understand completely what it's like. It's a real struggle. But if you have a good, strong mayor and you have a good, strong city council, it's huge. But when you have a dysfunctional city council, or if you don't have a mayor that's actually there that will, listen and support what you're bringing to the table, that's a big problem.
And what percentage of Ontario is sitting on traditional First Nations land? Like Ottawa, like our capital of Canada is right in the middle of Ojibwa. I think it's Ojibwa, right? So because we're kind of like, you asked a question, we just kind of started talking about something else. I think is what she's talking about. Why don't Liberals care about our country that's been economic growth in almost 10 years? We're not talking about the federal government. The big ten. We're talking about the Ontario Provincial Election. That's got nothing to do with it. And there's 10 years of growth. We have the best GDP in the third in the world. That's why we're hosting the G7 here in Alberta. But
I believe so.
Because we've got the worst, economics in the whole world. Yeah, laugh all you want. You're probably a part of the big potato. Anyways, move along with that one, because you laugh all you want, but the facts are the facts. And again, this has got nothing to do with the federal government. We're talking about the Ontario Provincial Election. And if you've got problems in your life, it's either because you have a crappy job, crappy wages, or you're living in Alberta. Or maybe in Ontario too. Apparently it's pretty bad there with the Conservatives. In fact, I'll tell you a little story. I've got these people I know that are so conservative. They left Alberta when the NDP got in. They moved into Manitoba because it was conservative. As soon as Wab Canoe got in, they left and moved to Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, life is very
Toronto is one of the biggest cities in Ontario. So Toronto's in Ontario, right? Toronto's one of the biggest cities in Canada. But we've got other large centers in our country, but Toronto is the biggest city in our country, but it's in Ontario. Ontario is our biggest province, and then Quebec. And Quebec is our bilingual, mainly bilingual province. Canada is a bilingual country, but Quebec is where most of our parlez-vous français, Quebecois live. But there is Quebecois all across our country. Many people are bilingual and speak French. Yep, you're right. Ontario healthcare is a dumpster fire. And healthcare across the country is a dumpster fire because the Americans needed doctors and we had too many in the 90s and they all ran to the States. And you can Google that. There's receipts right now. Go look, 1991.
Well, yeah, because here in Ontario, 2 million people do not have family doctors.
Yep.
Doctors are leaving the field. That's the key thing that we keep forgetting in this equation. They're leaving the field. They're going privatizing, or they're leaving Ontario completely.
Yep,
that's what should have been addressed. That's one thing I was hoping that one candidate would talk about. It's not about finding family doctors. It's about addressing the issue we have existing right now. Right, and they've been, so physicians...
They've been underpaid. They've been underpaid and underappreciated since the
Yes.
90s, right? So they were being
Yeah.
underpaid by our provincial governments because the provincial governments felt it was better off to cut Alberta healthcare premiums out, and so that so we didn't have to pay the $48 or whatever it was a month for us to have healthcare. So the population, they figured to make the population happy, they would make it so that we didn't have to pay premiums anymore. And I was thinking, as they're taking that out, how the hell are they going to fund Alberta? Like, how are they going to fund healthcare if we're not paying for anything? Well, then the doctors decided that they were going to start private billing, and they
Yeah.
were going to start extra billing, and they were going to start opening for-profit clinics. And prior to that, we didn't have a lot of for-profit clinics. And in 1992, that's when the for-profit clinics started being open. And what?
It's a troll I see in the
I saw
comments.
it.
Yeah, I don't get what the hell is.
Yeah,
I saw him
well,
on other streams too.
he'll be gone right now. That's all right. He's gone. See ya. But like I said, there were so many things that happened back in the 90s after free trade with the United States. When we sold our softwood lumber down the road, and we gave them our steel, and we gave them our oil for 15%,
Yeah.
and we landlocked ourselves because we wouldn't put any goddamn pipelines in, because God help that we put a pipeline through Quebec,
No.
right? And Alberta still is so greedy that they think that they're actually funding the whole country, when in actuality the whole country paid for a pipeline that they're profiting off of. Because that, everybody's tax dollars paid for that, TMX pipe, or not the TMX, but that Northern Gateway pipeline that's now running 200 barrels a day out to shore, that's being, tossed off, not going to the United States, it's going to other markets, and it's 200 barrels a day that pocketing, that twat next door is pocketing in Alberta. And it was funny because Trudeau kind of threw her under the bus because gloves are off with him now. He's retired, right? Now that he's stepping down. And he basically said, we paid for that pipeline on Danielle Smith's line to you. She's pocketing 200 barrels a day. And he threw her right under the bus, right in the press conference. I just howled because the gloves are off. He doesn't care anymore. And the thing of it is, too, with her standing and Mo standing off of Team Canada, even Ford standing on Team Canada, right? But barely, because as soon as he gets that mandate for 4 years, he'll be bending right over for Trump.
Exactly. And that's what my biggest fear of. I mean, I can leave the province. But I have a son with a disability, and he's in a group home. How can I leave him behind?
Well, it's like my daughter. She's in Alberta, stuck on AISH, right? Because she's got a mental health disability and she's got an addiction problem. So she's stuck in Alberta because she can't leave Alberta because she's tied to the province because of her disability, because of the disability payments. Again, if we had a universal income benefit, it wouldn't hold anybody to any province.
Exactly.
You could move to any province and not have to worry about losing your disability or having to go somewhere else. Yes, I know they're changing AISH because that douchebag is, making it so that she's going to make it so that nobody can get it unless they're like so disabled that they can't do up their own shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what they're doing in the States too with Medicare and all these other things. They're breaking down every service and every system that we got. And they think they're, burn it all down, burn it. I'm not saying everything's perfect in any way, stretch, or form. And yes, the systems are broken and some of them have to be fixed, but they're not unrepairable. They're not completely fractured, right? They need repairing. They need work. But if you don't work towards it, you keep breaking them down by you tear it all down and then you got to build it back up again. From what? What are you building back up?
I thought they should just expand it, expanding Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security to people that are younger, or people, I don't know, like maybe put more money in there instead of throwing it all.
In the population, right? And that's what Trudeau did, was he's investing in the population of counties, investing in the people, investing in students, investing in their youth, investing in our seniors, investing in our, and then everybody's crying, oh my God, the billions of dollars, oh my God, our deficit. Our trillions of dollars, 2 one-time payments for $800 million. One going out to our military because the conservative governments clawed them back and screwed them over so many times they weren't been in court. And $800 million to our First Nations people for reconciliation, for residential schools, and they should be paid double as far as I'm concerned. There's no amount of money that ever will repay back what happened during colonization in our country. There's no dollar sign that values that. None. Zero. And I'm not First Nations. I am. My grandparents came over from Scotland in the 1800s, and again, I didn't ask to be here. But by God, if I'm going to make it so that I don't think that they should get everything plus more, because we're less here. And that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I have some, like, strong feelings about First Nations. And I really feel like they got the very short end of the stick, and they deserve way more. Yeah. We should have come here and continued to live the way they were. Our land would be way better. Our society would be way better. We wouldn't be overran with so much chemical and manufacturing and all these things that were, population overgrowth in some countries and climate changes and all these things. Water, the basic needs for water. And we got countries like Australia coming in and wanting to mine our mines and mine our mountains and take our water in Canada. You got the orange potato thinking that everything runs on a tap up here. It doesn't. But we could sure shut it off if we wanted to.
Well,
Oh,
we can turn off our electricity. Their
And
electricity. Their electricity.
electricity, water, oil, logging, or oil. Yeah, all kinds of things. We could just shut it all off. And here's another little news flash. We just busted a bunch of illegal substances coming up from your country, not ours, with the big F. Wasn't us. It's coming up from you.
I'm aware. I heard, and plus
Right?
it's
But
coming from.
we've got the problem where we're importing it into, and just overrunning your country with all these illicit things.
Well,
We have a pew pew problem up here. They're all coming up, ghost ones that we don't even know what they look like, and they're coming across the border in Minnesota and across Detroit, and right at that, all the ghost things, pew pews, that are hurting our youth on our streets. And we don't usually have a lot of pew pew incidents in our country. Very, very, very few. We're kind of stabby.
it's all.
We have 50 years of rage.
I mean,
They got hockey sticks. We'll meet you at the border.
I mean, Trump is saying they're all coming from the substance is coming from Mexico, even though it's not. Even though statistically it's actually just coming from here, but people are just making it, or people are just getting it because it's a.
Statistically, exactly. It's being manufactured. I'll tell you something. Since 9/11, our borders have been locked up so tight you can't get a hair across it, because Bush locked down those borders during 9/11, and then they did COVID too. Come on, how much do you really think's getting? And do you see that? Do you see all the Canadians flooding our border to try to get across to the States? Do you see us just lined up? Do you see us just like banging and trying to get it? We're all lined up trying to get across the border, man. There's just such a border problem in Canada.
I think more Americans are trying to get to Canada. That's the real thing. People. That's what I'm. That's from what we're.
Even though they shut down the one border crossing that was having a few immigrants that were coming up from the States, that were actually had gotten to the States through Mexico, through that southern, coming in from Africa and other places, right? And basically, it was just they froze to death. We had some that were froze to, like, they actually froze to death trying to get out of Canada into the States, or coming in from in Manitoba there. I can't remember the name of the crossing, but it's been shut down because there was a stink about that, and that was long before the orange potato got in. So, like I said, there is not Canadians lined up at the American border dying to get in there. In fact, we're dying to line up to keep you that out. That's sad.
Because there's nothing really down here that's really much better. I think it's actually really worse, but yeah,
It's not comparable. We have different cultures. In fact, in Canada, we have different cultures in every region. In fact, like I said, I'm from British Columbia. Angela's from Ontario. We have different cultures. We have like different things. We listen to different music. We have different regions, but we're all Canadian and we all love each other. We're very proud Canadians, and we all we don't eat. We like and just like it's like not everybody in Canada eats poutine. Poutine's, a Quebec thing that we all have it. We can get it at McDonald's, right? But it's not like, oh my God, everybody's with poutine. No, but beer's a thing. We all have really much stronger beer than you do. Way better. And way better other MJ. Well, yeah. We'll kick your butt on that one too. Hockey.
oh yeah, I mean, fair enough.
But again, we were talking about the Ontario election. We've gotten off track of it.
Oh, my bad.
That's all right. You're good. I'm really bad for them. I'm a squirrel. Okay, so what else we got in here? Oh yeah, rental caps. What year did the rental caps come off? Do you think? So at one time, Ontario had rental caps, which meant that and here's another thing that you'll find this information on Marketplace CBC. They did an expose on all the apartment buildings that were being sold in Ontario during the pandemic. And the investments that were coming up out of the United States as shareholders, those big corporations buying up the apartment buildings in Ontario, specifically in the Windsor, Sault Ste. Marie area, and then, evictions and people losing because these places were falling apart as well. Too low maintenance, not enough maintenance done on them, and then upping the rents, right? And then because they're owned by shareholders, they have to show profit, right? So tick, 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 the rents all go up, and the vote is tomorrow. Election day in Ontario is actually tomorrow. There was advanced polls over the weekend, and that was a low voter turnout at 6%. So we're here to kind of like, do a 24. This is an election connection from this is Beaver Politics, and we're doing a 24-hour election connection. Yeah, I'm in BC too. So you haven't missed anything in BC. Everything stays still the same. But remember, vote, because 22 votes ended up deciding the BC election. That's what I mean. Your vote does count. Because if it wasn't for those 22 people that voted, we'd be stuck with a conservative government here too. But thankfully, and I'm not an NDPer, but thankfully we're not. In fact, like I said, ABC, especially out here, because BC didn't really have a Liberal government anymore either. They were social credits before. It's a long, drawn-out story. They were infiltrated by Liberals that were then infiltrated by, Conservatives that became the, BC Liberals that ended up being the BC United that, ended up getting, walked over, taken over by the Conservatives, and then all their money, sucked into the Conservatives and got paid out, and all the taxpayers are paying for their severance pay for them and all their staff.
Man.
Mustache, yeah. Well, it's getting, like I said, 53 days for the mustache man, right? And here's Harper, or not Harper, but yeah, here we are. Okay, so crazy mama shit. I'm ND previewing well. That's okay. Like I said, we are. That's vote. It's a bit of vote splitting. So why we actually ask you to go to smartvoting.ca if you're in Ontario and see who's going to be the best MP for your area and who's actually winning or the best one in the polls right now, so that there's not a lot of vote splitting, so we can actually get rid of this guy. Yeah, smartvoting.ca. And again, tapping is clapping, and please support us by gifting if you can. We really appreciate it, because we're going to be here for 24 hours. Frontline, you coming up?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. I'm going to put everybody else on mute, and we're going to let Frontline have a word, introduce yourself, how old you are, and you know the draw.
37. I'm BC. I wasn't here for, what you guys were talking about, so I'm just trying to kind of figure out what we're talking about at the moment. Obviously the Ontario election, but what part?
We've gone over actually the unemployment rates already. We've gone over the fact that you should be voting for an MPP, that you're not technically actually voting for Doug Ford or Bonnie Crombie. You're actually voting for your MPP, right? Which is your representative that should be working with your municipality. Kind of a little bit of our jurisdiction, rundown. We've covered a lot. So again, like we've talked about, basically that being said, we've gone off track a few times as well. But right now we're just kind of talking about rental caps and why the housing crisis in Ontario is the way it is, because of the corporates buying up big apartment buildings, rent-evicting, then, reselling to shareholders, and shareholders have to show profit. So that's why rental increases are, the way they are. And with no rental caps in Ontario, thanks to, who, why would it be another reason why you might not want to vote for him? You can take it from there.
I mean, sure, we can go into all kinds of different things. Have you guys talked about health? Yeah, you said you already talked about healthcare.
Healthcare, senior care.
Have you talked about education? All his cuts to education, all Dougie's cuts to education?
We can go on that one. We actually haven't touched on too much on education. We've been talking a lot about healthcare because Angela's been with us, and disability care because of the fact that OSDP. We also touched on the fact that the UBI that was actually being run in Ontario that was cut when he was back in, and how it affected some people in that area. And why a UBI would be good, because it would cut out all these disabilities and EI and stuff, and actually give people a living wage, and then be able to not have money clawed back and be able to leave a province and do better jobs. Like I said, we've covered a lot of stuff, so, but not a lot on education. So why don't you take it off on that one?
I mean, it's pretty basic. He's just reduced a ton of funding for Ontario's education system. You know, it's led to larger class sizes, it's led to the elimination of thousands of teaching positions, cuts to extracurricular activities. I know that he also made changes to Schmeck's education, to the Schmeck's education curriculum,
What
which
province
actually
was
ended
just
up,
showing? What province was just showing that they were protesting because they had all the principals had told the disabled kids to stay home? Was that?
What?
Yeah, so there was a protest I seen on, I can't remember where I seen that. It was on Canadian news, and there was the QPE workers out making hamburgers because the teachers were out protesting because the principals and school boards had told them, because they cut back so much on EAs, that there wasn't enough teaching staff to help the disabled kids. So the disabled kids had been told to stay home. Oh, was it in Alberta, Métis? So yeah, so apparently they had gone to court, I think, or something, and the judge had said that no, these kids have to go to school. So the EAs are on strike. So, and but they need to have, a contract where they're actually being paid enough to actually be able to come back and take care of these kids the way they need to be taken care of. But there have been so many incidents that I've been reading and seeing about kids being locked up
Yeah, it's Alberta.
naked in rooms, and like in these lockdown rooms, and all kinds of different rotten things that are happening to all our these children that are autistic and disabled and in our education systems. And I'm just horrified.
Yeah, well, the parents are basically saying that it's violating their charter of rights.
It is. It absolutely is. Everybody has a right to education in this country. It's in our charter.
Yeah, so there was a lawsuit that was filed at the Court of King's Bench in Edmonton against the Alberta government and Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides, and it points to a ministerial order made on January 10th that granted Edmonton Public School Board permission to commence at-home learning for select students. Yeah. That's so disgusting.
Right. So that being said, of course, that's happening in Alberta. We know that this government that's running in Ontario right now is no better. Well, I wouldn't say he's quite as cutthroat as she is, but he's running a close second. But again, if they're cutting back on healthcare, education, even here in British Columbia, the schools, the class sizes are absolutely ridiculous too. They've cut back on EAs as well. They don't have the staffing that they need here, and that's running under an NDP government.
I can't believe.
Oh.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. That's been the
Okay.
thing. That's been the thing since Christy Clark. Like this is the NDP had said that they were going to roll back some things and do new contracts. I believe they did for a bit, but there's still some stuff that's not good. Our kids deserve better. Our children deserve better because they're our future, and we keep cutting back on them. Who do we have to have take care of things when we're not here? And if we keep cutting back on their education, we're cutting back on our kids.
Well, that's factual because it's happened to my son. So my son, who's autistic, and when I started into the school system, I changed boards. So I went from one board to another board. And my son was only getting 1 hour of education each day. And I fought it, and I went as high as my MPP. And then I had a SEAC to help me. The SEAC actually helped get my son in. But this is happening a lot more in Ontario too as well. And so students, special educational students, are being left behind. They're not getting enough supports within the school system. And that's not right because that's against, like you said, the charter.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Well, it totally is. Like, I see it. Yeah, it is. And the thing is, like I said, they keep cutting back on our kids' education systems. I mean, they don't seem to even care if they show up anymore. Like whether they're neurotypical, non-neurotypical, they just don't seem to care, right? And the lack of counseling for our kids at schools, the lack of youth workers for them, the lack of drop-in centers, and actually extracurricular activities here are costing people like $2,500 if your kid wants to play basketball at school. We're not talking like after like another program. We're talking extracurricular basketball at the high school, $2,500 a year.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
So, like I said, healthcare cutbacks, education cutbacks all across the board, anywhere where there's a conservative government, it seems like. And then again, you have to ask yourselves when you go to the polls tomorrow in Ontario, what has Doug Ford done to change your affordability? What has he done to help you get anything any further ahead in the last 4 years? And everybody wants to blame the federal government. They can't, because these are things that these affordability levels all fall under provincial jurisdiction. So you can blame, you can, give the finger, you can do whatever you want. But again, the facts of the matter are, what has he done in the last 4 years to make your life more affordable? As you go to the polls tomorrow.
I
And
think
make
so.
sure you go to the polls tomorrow. And as you go to the polls tomorrow, please check out smartvoting.ca to see who the best MP and representation is going to be for your city. Because again, then there's also 142 seats in Ontario that are vacant. That's 142 ridings in that province that are unrepresented.
I know it's horrific. It's just absolutely horrific. And that's the scary part. Is the best scenario we can hope for is that we get him in as a minority government, because people are too wrapped up in the federal government and they're confusing it and they're bringing it into the provincial, and that's not how you vote.
No, because they don't matter. Okay, on any level, most provincial governments are not affiliated with the federal government. They might have the same names, they might have the same logos, but they are not. Even in a federal level, when it comes to federal politics, I'm a chair of a BC riding for the Liberal Federal Party, but we have our own boards, we have our own things going on in each province, that then we all at one time become delegates, then we all head into a federal convention, and then we vote on policies together that way. But every province has its own representation, even for the federal level. But provinces are not affiliated. So this Liberal Party here is not affiliated with the Liberal Party what's up right now. In fact, they don't even really have the same logo. It kind of looks the same. Green Party either. They aren't. These guys either. In fact, I think Doug Ford's, have you seen, old mealy mouth PP running behind Ford on any of this? No, you see Ford going, I don't want you coming out to do anything. You don't see a lot of, but when it comes to provincial and the NDP, Jagmeet's in there. Why? That's his thing. But Polyev was out here during the provincial election too, pumping our BC Conservatives, because Rusted's right up his alley. Where Ford, not him, and Ford leans more to getting along with the Liberals, and even though he appears to be, not so much, but he, worked with the feds more than any of the rest of them did.
Have you guys talked? Oh, sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I just want to say I'm literally terrified of this election. I literally am terrified. So you can go ahead now. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm also terrified. That's kind of what I was going to go into, is like talking about with Trump's threats of, annexing Canada and whatnot. Ontario is, I'm just so scared for Ontario if Doug Ford gets in, especially with the majority, because his business interests, he doesn't care about the working class citizens. He doesn't care about the people of Ontario. He cares about his own business interests. And the dude has been aligned with American Republicans since 2018. He's been praising them. He praised Trump back in his first term. And like, I know that huh?
Look at the ones that are wearing red hats. Red hat, brown shirt. I don't care what it says.
It's just, I know that he's come out publicly to say, oh, I'm going to be so strong against the United States, but he doesn't do anything he says.
No, he doesn't. And again, when Gretzky handed the Team Canada red hats that said 47 on them, that was a slap in the face for the rest of us too. And
yeah, and what about,
where do you see Ford? Right up Gretzky's ass.
And I wanted to point out, did you guys hear that the tariffs are not coming in on March 4th? They're coming in now in April.
2nd, yeah.
Because
for certain things, and maybe not these things, maybe not that thing. And it
psychological warfare.
F on the border. F on the border. The big F on the border. The borders are. But here it is. They just caught a bunch of F going across their border into here.
But that plan was already in place with the border plan. What he said was that he said that he got Canada to to like kneel to this demand of having a border czar or whatever. But then the border czar or whatever, that whole plan was already in place
No.
before Trump
The
got
border
in.
czar wasn't, because we've never had a border czar. We don't use that kind of terminology in Canada. We have never had a border czar. We don't even use the word czar. That is the most American bunch of crap that I've ever heard in my life, because Canadians don't use that. That's not our terminology. That's not who we are.
Basically, they said in the American media is they claim that they said that there was already a plan in place for the border stuff before Trump even got in.
There was a plan. There was a plan for us to strengthen up our border. We just didn't call the guy in charge a czar. You know what I mean? Like we just
Because we're
we
sitting there
now
guns
gave
coming
him
across.
we just gave him that name to make Trump shut up, to be honest. Like
Yeah,
that's the only reason. Like that's not a terminology we've ever used.
No, ever. And again, we were going to
It's
tell
not
you.
even
That's what
American
the American
terminology.
media-
It's Russian terminology.
No, they've had a
the
drugs.
American
They've
media
had a
has
drug
told
czar in
us
the
that.
States.
That's why I was confused.
Yeah, but it's a Russian terminology.
Czar is, yeah, you're right, absolutely. He's 100% correct on that. Czar is not an American or a Canadian word.
I genuinely feel like they're doing this whole tariff on, tariff off, tariff on, tariff off just to mess with us, to troll us. And I honestly wonder if they're actually trying to pander to the Canadian Conservatives to get them elected.
They have been since the convoy. Open your eyes. They've
No,
funded the convoy. And again, you betcha, they've been endorsing Polyev, and again Trump too. Again, or not Trump, but Ford. Ford, like even with that Starlink deal, like come on, like he cancels it to sound tough for 20 minutes. That lasted
Yeah, right. He
20
turned
minutes.
around within 48 hours and decided, it's back on the table.
Yeah, because Trump's gonna drop the tariffs till for a couple months. Good job, DS. Oh, you did neither. Nobody did anything. And then you got Kevin O'Leary down there yapping his lips. He's a disgrace and a traitor. Like, good grief. Like, and again, you got Ford running around with his Never 51 jersey on. But like, what?
I just know that Dougie is going to give tax cuts to U.S. companies as a way to appease Trump in exchange for favorable business conditions, and it's just going to kill our Canadian autonomy.
Well, we can't give up our sovereignty. To be fair, when our dollar's low, it's better for Canadians for our export. We need to keep, but to be low or just running par to their dollar, it's better for our economy, and it's better for the TSX. Again, we have more of what they need, and we could be sustainable. We could shut them off, and we would suffer. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but if we all buckled up our bootstraps and actually, like, instead of being greedy and all worrying about what the grass was greener and what our neighbors had, and actually buckled down and actually bought Canadian and saved our fucking pennies, we could get by. Community, exactly. If we all grew our own vegetables, had our own we have enough beef and cattle up, we have enough everything up here.
But the Conservatives will never get on board. And
we don't need them either. We need to vote them out so they don't even have a seat in Canada. That's easy enough to do.
Of course, that would be great. But what I'm saying is we still have 30% of Canadian voters that swing that way.
You're right, because you're never going to please anybody.
That's the problem.
Well, you can't. And that's just life, right? We're never going to please everybody. But again, we have First Nations people that we should be looking for first, right? When it comes down to what we end up doing here in Canada, it's not up to, as far as I'm concerned, up to us. It's up to our First Nations that hold the treaties of this land with the Crown. Bottom line. And they can go back and forth with all the government and all the, whatever, and sovereignty and this crap. But when it comes down to it, our First Nations needs to be spoken to. Consultation. And they are going to say no. And they already they don't have a border. If you hold status in Canada and you're First Nations, there's no border. You can go freely across without any issue because you're First Nations, because there is no border. And that's, and that's the way it should be for them. But again, Canadians need to stand together and really stand up. And if those 30% really think that they can do better with, then go. How about those 30% just pack up and fuck off?
Have you guys actually talked about Doug's issues with dealing with Indigenous rights in Ontario? Because he's made some big hiccups.
Go ahead. We really haven't touched on that because I'm not First Nations. I try not to speak for them.
That's why I was wondering if you guys had discussed it, because I don't feel like it's my place to talk about it either. I just know that he's made some big hiccups, and when I've learned from other Indigenous creators, that's when I learned about all of the different things that he's really not an ally.
He's not an ally. No conservative is. If you look at the declaration
No,
for the Conservative Federal Party, they're like 112 down on the 112th down on the list of declarations of policies for conservatives. I didn't have time to check the declaration for his stuff tonight before I came on. I was trying to do some, and I had a podcast before this as well. So I've been on the air now, going on like 6 hours, or do 90 minutes before, and then this one now too. So I didn't have time to do a lot of research on.
do we have anybody in here that's watching right now that is Indigenous that can speak on this?
If you're from the Ontario area, though.
Yeah.
If you know the treaties and the unceded portions of First Nations in Ontario, I know that, I believe it's Ottawa is sitting on, it's not a Jabula, I have to look it up, but there are several treaties out there, but I believe there's some unceded northern parts of the province as well. I know British Columbia is 95% unceded, but the federal government just gave Wet'suwet'en and Wet'suwet'en their land back. So that happened in British Columbia last week.
Sorry, what happened in British Columbia? I was just looking through the chat here.
Gave the northern west coast, is it Wet'suwet'en and Wet'suwet'en land back.
Oh, that's amazing.
Along the BC northern coast. Yeah. The federal government just gave some First Nations land back. Do I have to yell it? Say it to you louder there, Skiltard or Skillard, whichever you want to call it. But that's what I just said. The federal government just gave some land back to First Nations that's theirs. Haida. Yes, thank you, Collins.
Do they have over there like? I was gonna say, do they have like, what do they call them? Like over here, we have like things like Indian reservations, or
we have
native
land that they were
reservations.
forced to stay on. Yeah, we have land that they were forced onto. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Forced onto it.
So
They didn't get to pick it. It wasn't like they got to go shopping for it. They didn't get to pick it. It was like, the worst pieces of land that they could find for them, and they threw them on there and said, "Here, try and farm this." And another thing that happened that was really nice: 11 bison was just returned to North Battleford, Saskatchewan, because they're bringing the bison and the buffalo back to northern Saskatchewan too. You're right, land back. So these things are reconciliation. These are things that the Liberal government has brought forward with First Nations. Okay, this has been a hand in hand. They're not wards of anybody. They're people, human beings, just like everybody else. Shut the hell up before you get muted. That's your first strike, dude. I do not tolerate any of that here. So they're not wards of anybody. They're their own peoples with their own sovereign nations, and they are human beings. So anyway,
Wow.
yes, they have brought in some of the buffalo back to northern Saskatchewan, near the North Battleford First Nations areas. Yeah, for not for much longer, Métis Mama. Those status cards aren't going to be around for much longer. Reconciliation will have them. Yeah, I know, according to the law, but I don't care. I don't care what the law says. That's not how I see it. I know the status cards should be ripped in half. You shouldn't have to have them. I know he's not wrong, but I could be wrong. I'm telling him he can go fuck himself.
You are one feisty lady.
Oh, you're just figuring that out? You've never watched me before, have you?
No, I have.
But yeah, that's one thing I will not tolerate. My husband's First Nation, so is my son. And that's one thing I will not tolerate. Absolutely not.
No, it's okay. I love your feistiness. I was saying it as a good thing, not as a bad thing.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I should go smoke one, and maybe that would calm me down for a bit. Another thing that the Liberals did that was really good for Canada, legalizing the Mary Jane, because it just brought in $57 million for every municipality over the last 5 years. So when you're wondering whether the housing crisis is, ask the premiers where the money is, because they get 75% of that.
I've always wanted, like, there's some states that in the United States that are legalizing it, and then they're making it like recreational use, starting that, or or medical use, but they're slowly starting to just now. But then it's like still we have a lot of lots of states that aren't legalizing it, but then the feds just finally decided to change it from Schedule 1, which has like the worst of the worst stuff. We're talking like all that other, the big stuff. But then now just cranked it down to Schedule 3, which is where the, scientists or whatever can study it, which is not really
They've been studying it
good, but
for decades. So they've been lying to you. There's been a patent on the MJ in the United States since 1977. So again, they've been lying to you. Canada's had a legal medical program since 1998. It took them 2 years for the federal government to be forced to actually make the paperwork so it was actually legalized for medical in 2000 in Canada. We got recreational in it was 2016, where else it was 2017, 2019 before it was actually legal. And then it was another year before we actually had edibles that were legal.
oh wow, lucky.
We could have refined our own gas, crazy mama, but you know what happened in 1988? There was a government with JT's dad and Lockheed and Rennie Levesque, and there was a great big fight over pipelines, and Quebec said we weren't having them, and Alberta says we weren't funding the rest of the country, and there was the Pierre Elliott Trudeau ripoff, which is Petro-Canada, which was a bunch of smear and crap, and you're right, they wouldn't build refineries because not in our backyard. Let's send it to the States, let them refine it, and send it, let us buy it back.
But yeah, you're right. You're right, crazy Mama Shay. We would be one of the richest countries in the world if we had more refineries. We have 13 refineries, but it's nowhere close to enough.
Thank you.
I mean,
We should have had pipelines running to Quebec. We should have had 4 and 5 refineries, but Quebec didn't want them because they didn't want busting with their hydro and their nuclear power. It had everything to do with Quebec's sovereignty because they were still fighting for separatization back then. And Alberta had the greediest Klein and Lockheed. And there was no way that they were going to give any more money to the federal government off the backs of oil. But then we had the oil crisis, which the oil patch crashed.
no,
And
no,
as oil went down, like in COVID, zero. Oil was worth absolutely nothing. But again, remember, OPEC controls the oil prices, not the orange potato.
now, admittedly, I do personally think we need to start going towards renewable energy, like fusion energy, like using like solar energy, nuclear energy, because climate change is at this point kind of just going out of control, and we're already like, over here.
I'm not sure that our bitumen can actually be refined.
And yeah, you guys are right. There is 17. I was wrong. There's not 13. That was from, I just remembered that from a while ago.
I don't think they can. Those 17 refineries can refine the bitumen that's coming out of the oil sands.
No, they're not. No matter what, we don't have enough. But I was wrong on my number. It wasn't 13. It was 17.
And then they've shut them down. Then they shut some down. So there was more, but they shut down the Shell plant over in the Crow's Nest Pass years ago. There's another one up near Hannah, Alberta. They shut down, but we do need more. But again, nobody wants them in their backyard. It's called consultation too, because the First Nations don't want them either, along with the pipelines, right? Why a lot of natural resource extraction and stuff has been on stall is because of lack of consultation. And that's just the way it has to be, first and foremost, always. So if you don't go to a nation and sit and consult with them, and if they say no, no is no. It's their, that's their reserve, that's their, sacred area, that's their burial. Nobody should be asking them to rip through it for anything, no matter what. That's just the way it is. And no more than we should be going through it for water. Look what they want to do on the grassy mine there in the back, along the back ends of the Rocky Mountains all through Alberta. That's going to affect farm water. It's going to feed cattle. That's going to actually do harm to the agriculture in the lower parts of southern Alberta. They knew that when they put the Old Man River Dam in too, though. It actually caused a lot of backlash, and First Nations in standoff didn't want that dam going too. And they fought. Like Milton Bourne with a tooth stood on one side with a pew, and he was not having it. He did not want them there. He's the king of Ontario. Who's the king of Ontario? Oh, we got a troll.
Talking about Doug Ford.
Oh, it's okay. We got a troll. Keep on going. We just think it's funny because if you're that happy living in that unaffordability, having no health care, waiting in an emergency room for that long, having your kids have no education, go ahead and vote for Dougie. And then he'll bend you over and sell you to the orange potato. So you go ahead and have your Papa uniform on Nova, whatever, califragilistic, supercalifragilistic. Probably would make it worse. How? Explain. We're here to listen. If you got a good reason for why he's doing such a fabulous job, we'd love to hear it. He looks more like the Michelin Man in a sheep's clothing. No, he can't. And it's not Ford's job to wrestle with Trump. He's not the Prime Minister of Canada.
But
so it's got nothing to do with Ford. So what does it got to do with Trump?
Ford is a bootlicker for Trump. Are you kidding me?
Right? But again,
did you see his commercial? Did you hear his commercial where he tears down our Prime Minister? And he says, oh, the Prime Minister is basically slacking out and that I have to come in and step in. What's he doing? He hasn't done anything.
He just wants to sound tough for a good 20 minutes, and then he turns around and does the complete opposite and panders to all the Republicans.
Right.
He's tied in so deep with the Republican Party of America, dude.
Yeah. Ford sold us to, Musk over the Starlink deal so that, Northern Ontario could have internet. Because Ford's done so much for the northern part of Ontario in the last how many years he's been there. Why do they still not have
He's
internet?
separated from Mega now. No, he's not. He's just saying that so he gets your vote, dude. Why do you guys believe anything that comes out of a politician's mouth if it's the conservative politician? I don't get it. Look at his history. Look at what not even that, but even what he said recently. Like, even recently, he still pandered to Trump. He was all tough on him, and then 48 hours later, he was like, we need to have a good relationship with Donald Trump because we have dude, he spent tens of millions of dollars on Fox News to pander to Americans about why we should be BFFs. Like, that's your money that he could have spent on education. He could have spent on healthcare. But instead, he gave it to Fox News and the Sean Hannity show. Are you kidding me?
And then he's going to hand over about another $100 million to Elon Musk like he needs it.
Again, just because he says something with his mouth does not mean that he will stick to it. He also said that he's going to make housing better. He said he's going to make healthcare better. He hasn't done any of that. Like, why do you people judge your politicians by the words that come out of their mouth versus their actual actions? I don't get it.
Well, they're just saying actions speak louder than words.
Your brain. You know what? You have a cell phone in your hand there, crazy mama. You already got a chip. And probably in your lips, too. But again, you don't need a chip in your brain because you're carrying a smartphone. They got all the information they need.
Now, if I had a chip in my brain, it would be looking like I'm from Cyberpunk, having like an augment. That's the most
ridiculous thing I've ever read. That takes the internet today. I don't want a chip in my brain. You've got
if I have a chip in my brain.
Are you on TikTok? You got a chip in your brain. Well, come on. Let's be serious. That wins the most stupid remark I've read on Facebook today. Or on the internet today. Like, come on.
He just needs some time to fix things up. He has never fixed things up since he's been the premier of Ontario, dude.
There's ethical problems too, because didn't Elon Musk tried putting in chips inside monkeys' brains or something like that?
But there's going to be a chip in your brain, but here's my phone in my hand. I'm taking selfies and video everywhere on talk. But hey, the brain in my brain. Jesus. I tell you what. But again, if you're going to vote for Doug Ford, then you probably do have a chip in your brain.
I try to.
Oh my god! That's like wow. That hurt my brain.
No, I get it. I think
it's funny when people think that they're, again, there's this thing called what is it, IDU, that Harper's working on with the
Yeah.
facial recognition. They can see right through masks and
Yeah.
stuff and all kinds of fun things, right? If there's an election when tomorrow and it's smartvoting.ca, and I think you already know about that, JB. But if you want to come up and tell people about that beautiful app, you can. And we're doing a 24-hour election connection with just keeping it going, getting some momentum so people go and vote. Because the advance polls at 6% really suck donkey.
How is there such a low attendance rate for these elections?
First of all,
These
they
elections.
February.
Why did only 33% of Americans vote? It's the same question. Why did only 33% of America vote?
Well, that's just because I guess they lose the. I guess they just lose the. They think that nothing changes whether they vote. I think that's the only main reason, or until it affects them personally. But then they never really research anything because they
But again, you have to wonder why people don't vote. They're apathetic. They think their voices don't matter, especially in Western Canada, because and it's a population thing. And we don't have an electoral college in Canada either. But population-wise, everybody, by the time the polls close in the western part of Canada, we've already got an election called because the population in Western or in Eastern Canada is the same size as all of Western Canada in Toronto.
Do they even do mail-in ballots where you can mail a ballot or something?
Yes, definitely.
They
Hey
do
guys, can we let
bedside
JB
voting,
talk
too.
for a sec?
I'm just here to listen and hang out. It's 1 a.m. My brain's turned off from doing smart voting shit all day. So
Thank you
I'm.
again for that. We
No,
really
no. Hey, I
appreciate
turned on the federal model today. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, right on.
Woo!
Good.
Yeah. So the federal model's out. Yeah, it's definitely crazy to think about because I was taking a look at our numbers going out of today, and we're almost at 2.7 million Canadians. 2.4 that is from Ontario unique viewers. That
That's
is
amazing.
over 16% of the Ontario population. That is over 50% of the people who voted last election. So now, not every one of them is going to follow the tools and strategically vote. We would be egotistical to think that would be the case. But even if just 10% of that, 5% of that, 3% of that, strategically votes, that's enough to swing a riding. That's enough to make a measurable notice in the data, and it's a great start. As we kind of venture down this idea, if we're not going to get true electoral reform on platforms in front of us as Canadians, we got to use our voices and our vote to tell our politicians, hey, you're not going to do this, so we're going to do it for you. And we're going to basically decide collectively before we all go vote who is the right person to represent us in that riding.
Right. Well, to be fair, we do have 110 parties in Canada. It's just that people don't ever vote.
Yeah.
For that person. There's you can be independent. There's we have an MMJ party. There's all kinds of. There's 110 parties. But again, there's not enough momentum behind any one of them to get any one of them elected. Is the problem, right? But
sure.
Fairly, with what your app does though is strategically voting, which is what we've been pushing for decades to make sure that the right people get in. But we have to keep pushing the fact that your MLA, right? In Ontario, it's your MPP, the best person for your riding in your ward, in your municipality, that's going to work with your municipal government to get you what you need, your best representation.
So yeah, it's really frustrating because it seems like the Ontario New Democrats have completely imploded on themselves here, and they did a paid ad about 2 days ago against strategic voting, and all their candidates are, making videos against smartvoting.ca, which I find kind of frustrating because,
Why would they do that?
I don't know. Mart Stiles and I know each other. I was in her riding. I helped with her campaign. I door knocked with her for 2 of her elections. They know who I am, and for them to just take this very aggressive stance, but then also it's really funny because under Andrew Horwath in 2018, they were big advocates for strategic voting. They were pushing people to strategically vote in the Ontario election because they were the beneficiary of it. And this is kind of the whole point of why I wanted to create this. And then I finally sat down and did it because the parties don't care. They only care about the per vote subsidy. They don't care about actually gaining power. And all these new Democratic candidates, which pains me, by the way, as a new Democrat, to see this happen, is they don't actually care about the greater good. Some of them do. There's been 3 of them that have stepped down in Ontario citing a vote split, and those are the ones that I'm like, good. And there was Liberals that did it, and there was a Green Party candidate that did it as well. Like, when you have almost 3 million people visit a site in 28 days, like, that's going to get attention. And to sit here and respond to it with fists in the air saying we're going to fight back is just the wrong approach, especially in a democracy.
It's the wrong
right?
message for democracy. Exactly. Like, that's the wrong message, because what you're trying to do, like, you're not trying to influence any votes. You're
No.
just giving out the specific facts and information and showing polls as to what is looking like the best viable candidate for your riding to be Doug Ford, right? And that's the data that you guys are collecting is accurate. I can't understand why anybody would be against that. I think that's the best tool out there for any election. For
I've
anybody
had to have some
that's
tough
not politically
conversations.
inclined either, right? Like, how many people in Canada aren't politically educated?
Yeah, we fielded calls from some campaign managers that have reached out, asking like, can we see your data? Can we see where you're getting this stuff? Because their data is not matching our data, and when there's that happen, a good campaign manager reaches out to these services and be like, where are you getting this, so we can have the best tool belt going into this thing. And
Right.
I will give credit that there was a lot of Green Party campaign managers have reached out. Some Liberal campaign managers have reached out. Some new Democratic ones. Shout out to Chris Glover. We had a great conversation on the phone. Spadina Fort York candidate in Toronto, who's slated to win his riding, by the way, and we're recommending that. And I said to Chris, I was like, we're getting so much hate on this when you're reaching out now in your campaign and wanting our data, which I have no problem turning it over. I'm not hiding anything, right? If they want to see it, here's what I got, right? It's for them to have. And because we do want to do a collaborative approach with this movement, but at the same time, like, we're going to fight if somebody comes at us. Like, if you're going to challenge our data, that's, I did this for a year secretly in the background. I was 98% accurate in BC, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia.
Right.
So, like, and this is Ontario. The data set is even higher in here. Like, there's so much more data points. It's
right. And I don't understand what they're afraid of, because this is only giving them more meat, right?
right.
I mean, I look at it as that they're probably, again, it's party over people in my eyes when they do stuff like this. They care more about their own win than what's good for the province or what's good for the country, because that's the way that it comes across from an outsider looking in, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are really frustrated with the way, like, we voted in Doug Ford in 2018. Fine, whatever. We were done with Kathleen Wynne. We were done with the Liberals after 12 years or whatever. It's fine, whatever. It was time for a change. I am a Toronto resident, so I kind of like scowled when it was Doug Ford. I was like, ugh, because we know the Fords after Rob and Doug and all their antics for many, many years in the city. But it was like, okay, fine. And then after all the bullshit that happened during the pandemic and this and that, and then he had his election in 2022, I was like, surely we're done with him, right? Like, we fired Wynne for a lot less than what Dougie's doing, and then we reelected him to a majority, and I was like, why? Like this, and then I looked at the numbers, I'm like, oh, that's why. It's not that we like him, it's just we can't pick somebody to do it. And with our projections, if you were to remove the vote split tomorrow, which from the projected results that we're thinking it's going to be tomorrow, the Liberals and the Conservatives would tie 47 ridings apiece, and the New Democrats would hold the balance of power. So I want to kind of go back to all those New Democratic candidates and be like, if that's the result, like if it truly would have been, if we stopped the vote split, that would have been the number. I want to go back to them and be like, so you were against this, why? Because if you endorsed this and actually promoted this behavior and dropped out of races where you weren't competitive and worked with the Liberals for the Liberals to drop out of races when they weren't competitive, so we actually had an election and then all sit down at the table at the end of the election, be like, how do we do this coalition? How do we do this together?
Exactly. And I don't understand why they can't work like that collaboratively, because all we want them to do as representation of the people is to work for us and do their jobs, right? We touched on that earlier about the fact that there's no representation for people in their municipalities because they're voting for people that aren't representing them. And if you don't vote for them, they don't represent you.
It's really frustrating. I I've had a lot of mixed emotions. I'm overwhelmed with the support and the how much people are enjoying this and like seeing this as a very useful tool. But at the same time, it's like, where do we go? Like, we turned on the federal model today because we wanted to just, we were going to do it on the 1st of March, but we wanted to kind of, because people can't use the site right now because we're in a blackout. Elections Ontario made it very clear to me that you need to shut it off at 9 a.m.
Oh yeah, for sure. During the
Like,
election. Yeah.
well, like we had to shut it off at 9 a.m. this morning
Yeah, no, I
because
understand that. Yeah.
and it was
They don't want
so.
anybody influencing the, like when you work for Elections Canada, you can't say anything about anything, right?
Yeah,
So I
it's a part of the media blackout rules under the Canada Elections Act, because, and this is my own demise, the company's registered under my actual business, which is a media company. So therefore, I'm a media company, so I have to use the blackout. That was
Yeah.
kind of my own shooting myself in the foot, but that's just the
Later,
way.
you might need that for later, right? You got to keep that
Well,
in your back pocket. It's always going to be useful. Having that media press, that's good. That's
yeah,
always
we're gonna sever we're gonna sever it off before the federal election to turn it into an incorporated co-op.
yeah.
So we've had a lot of debate back and forth. Do we go nonprofit? Do we do this? Do we do that? But if we go nonprofit, then we are subject to finance laws. We can only accept so much donations, and we can only accept so much revenue. Which
corporation, it's way easier.
yeah,
You just have to keep books and do your taxes once a year. It's way easier, and you
yeah,
have to just do the ST number. It's way easier.
yeah, and as a co-op, when we get funding, which we're actively seeking, we can then pay people, but then any profits we get from what we do will be paid out evenly among everybody that works there. Like, I'm not here to make
No,
get rich quick
yeah,
kind of thing.
profit sharing kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's that's the thing. Like, we're all gonna do this collective movement together, and if we make some money, we'll split it, and that's that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
the best way
about the money though. It's about the building trust and giving people data and giving people
building
tools.
communities too, and it's building communities, and which we really need to do in Canada right now. Never mind the federal, the provincial election. That's very important to people that live in Ontario, which is our largest population in Canada. To be
Yeah.
fair, and they
Well,
hold a
the
lot of
largest
weight.
economic output too, much
Yeah,
to
and it
Alberta's
holds a
complaint.
lot of weight for the rest of us because I'm in British Columbia, right? Frontlines in British Columbia. We're here to just kind of keep the momentum going to kind of talk about voting and how we see Ontario from the outside. And again, with my political, science background and stuff, I see exactly where the breakdowns have been, and but it still floors me how people fall into the same pattern. It's like Alberta. Like, why? What has
Yeah.
this guy done for you in the 4 years? Where's the affordability? What has he done for housing? What promises has he made and he broken? The Green, there's so many, but yet they'll vote for him. We literally packed a bale of hay around Lethbridge during a federal election, dressed up like a conservative, because Jim Hillier refused to go to any of the debates, and that bale of hay would have won because he didn't show up, but that bale of hay did. But we did.
Well, I'm in the same boat here in Ontario. There's a lot of really deep conservative pockets in Ontario. And when I used to live right downtown, and then I wanted to buy a house, so I had to move out of the city a little bit and had to move to this conservative pocket. And I'm in the same boat. You could paint a telephone pole blue on my street and people would vote for it. Like, it's really frustrating because the other parties don't take this area very seriously. And like, I'm going to be voting tomorrow for Liberal for the first time in my life because that's the strategic vote in my country, or in my riding. And our Liberal candidate is a parachute candidate in from Toronto, which I don't feel great about. But it's like, I can't vote Conservative. I just can't. Like,
I'm in a riding out here in BC that I've got no Liberal. Like, I'm the chair for our Kootenay Riding Association.
yeah.
My candidate bailed because it was so bad. Our last election was so bad, JP. Like, it was
Oh, I
so
know.
bad. We got Rob Morrison as our MP out here, and he is such a pile. But poor Robin, and she's the best would have been the best for the area. She was just the best, right? She ran 2 campaigns in a row, and we tried our best, but there was just no way breaking through these rednecks. Just no way.
Yeah, I think the challenge too that we need to face, and this is the big thing that we're going to be doing to turn this into something not just election based, but just like an everyday, not an everyday, but something like you look at every now and then just to see what's going on. Is we've acquired a volunteer that works for one of the largest app development companies in Canada, and he's taking this on and he's building us out an Android and Apple iPhone app that is going to live on people's phones. Same sort of thing. You open it up and you can see your riding. It's going to know where you are because they can do that because it's an app. And what the other thing we're going to do is we're going to use that as an educational funnel. So, say there is an important bill that is being voted on, we can then push notify people if they consent to say, hey, your MP is voting on an abortion bill today. Your MP is voting on a firearms bill today. Your MP voted against this or for
I love
this.
that. That is
And
so great. I just love that because people are so misinformed and willfully ignorant.
yeah,
Like,
if it's just a notification on their phone, that's a sentence or two, people will read that. Where they, if it's like this email newsletter or this like long process to try to find the votes, it people don't want to do it. But if I'm just like in the grocery store and I look at my phone pings, I look, it's like, oh, my MP voted against uh, pharmacare today, or my MP voted against this, or my MLA did this. It's like, oh, my MP's resigning. Why? Like all these like news pieces that we just don't get out to people.
well, yeah, if you're not in tune to CPAC, you're not going to hear it, right? If
Right.
you're not watching CPAC or watching CNN, CBC News or whatever, which most people don't. Like, not everybody's
No.
not everybody's political junkies. Like we got like CNN on one, phone, and I got CBC on another, and I've got CPAC on another, and I'm on my phone. Like,
My wife,
members like that. Like
my wife's still on mat leave, but when Parliament's in and I'm sitting here, I work from home. So like I have CPAC on for question period when Parliament's sitting. She has to leave the room. She's like, I can't do this. Like it's so frustrating.
Like he comes home from work and he's like, oh my god, how many channels? You got CNN, you got Al Jazeera. Like he's
Yeah.
like amazing.
But yeah, and the other thing that we're going to be doing with the app, on top of education, is we're going to obviously opt in. People can opt into this. What we're going to do our own polling. So we're going to basically collect a lot more demographic data like median income, postal codes, phone numbers, stuff like that. And if people opt in, it's completely optional.
Right.
And then we can basically say, hey, because we don't have a lot of polling in Canada that's hyper local. Like I want to do a poll so badly right now in Hamilton because of the steel tariffs that are happening right now, and that's steel town. I want to know what
he's held them off though. Now he's waiting until April the 2nd.
I know, but yeah, it's crazy. But like my point is like I want to talk to people who live in Hamilton about how they're feeling about the political climate. And polls in Canada just go, we'll do Ontario.
Well, Mississauga, they've got the highest unemployment rate in Ontario.
Right, Mississauga. I want to do Brampton too because of all this anti-immigrant talk.
Saint Marie, right? So Saint Marie is another one with like large manufacturing and high jobless rate, right?
Right, and that's kind of the thought here is that we can do, because we'll be on people's phones, is we can say, okay, target this geolocational area for a poll and see how people are doing it. And that data, one, will be public, but two, we can offer to political parties and say, hey, do you want this? Right? This is something that you might be interested in. Right. And give a lot more data points into the pool so that analysts and commentators can talk.
Not really like not everybody's being reached out to the demographics. Like even when they do the Angus Reid polls, like they ask questions to see what demographic and whether they want you to be on that poll or not. So they're actually pre-screening on whether you take some of these polls and stuff, right? So they're really getting the answers from real Canadians. I think somewhere that's like an app where like you would have where people can actually input where they live and like Stats Canada kind of thing, but people get this weird thing, right, privacy, Stats Canada being shut down for 5 years when it was drastically harmful to Canada.
Yeah. Well, and with modern day app security and encryption, right, I'm not too worried about app data, like not to say where our device, our app is stored, but it's on a very like top tier grade security thing. Like I'm not too worried about that. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that's a concern. And that's why we'll always be opt-in to give that data. We're never going to charge people to see their data. We're never going to charge people to see their polling results. We're not about that.
No,
we just want to create a tool. We just want to create something that people can have in their arsenal of just being informed. And if it just means you check it every now and then just to see where the numbers are looking like, what people are talking about, is great. And there's going to be a social aspect too, so you can like things, comment, and see it. I'm so excited to build this out, and I think it's going to be something that we need.
I can't wait to see it. It'll be fabulous. Like
our new website looks absolutely stunning. It's not out yet. We're still building it, but our design team that we got volunteering with us is like it's like, this thing is so cool. It knows where you, like, it reads your location with consent, and it puts a stat up on the screen that's specific for your region. Like, do you know your MP was absent from Parliament 42% of the time? Like, we're
Right.
just curating all this, like, data
That's
points
great,
of,
because
like,
that's stuff that people don't realize. Like, like they're supposed to be there. They're being paid a certain salary per month to be there, and they should be there. If they're not there, then nobody's doing it.
$92,000 a year
I
for
know,
cabinet
right?
positions. It's
Okay,
crazy.
we had a question here. What Stats Canada? Stats Canada is just Statistics Canada. It's a ministry within the government that actually takes stats, like how many population and age groups and demographics and all kinds of statistics, and then they compile it all together in data and put out percentages of what population growth is and birth rates are and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, StatsCan is not a lot of countries have government-based statistical collection services, and we're very lucky in Canada to be able to have one website. Like, what was the population of Canada in 1945? And they have it. It's just like
Yeah.
easily available to find. We're very lucky to have that.
Yeah, and then the fact that they can actually keep up, like
Yeah.
and they do it. I think it's every 2 years they try to update everything to make sure that we've got a pretty fairly accurate. But like I said, for 5 years we didn't get that, and it cost the provinces transfers for population growth
Yeah.
and municipalities to lack in transfers from the provinces and stuff. That it caused almost the rift of like the housing and everything just kind of dropped down, and it just seemed like everything kind of economically was a slump, and we've been still, and then trying to slowly crawl back out, right? Veteran
Yeah.
services and everything having to be reopened, the C-19, and now we're here again. I think that our economy is doing a heck of a lot better. I wish more Canadians could feel that and understand this is a worldwide economic problem. But
And we're doing better than most other countries.
We are. We really are. And like, listen, I spend a lot of time perusing around Americans' lives and talking to people around the world about their situations and what's troubling them. And I can honestly tell you that Canada's not really that bad of a state right now. Like, we got some issues that we need to kind of highlight and focus on for sure. But I think every country has that at any given time, right? I think that's not, there's no utopia in this world.
I don't think that we'll ever get that. And I don't think that looking at balancing budgets and being in some utopia of balanced budgets and all these things
Can't do it.
reality.
I think conservatives need to really take a giant step back and stop thinking that a government can be run like a business, because it can't. It's not a business. It's a corporation technically in legal status, but it's not. To balance the books, you can't, like, this is my one criticism of Mark Carney, as much as I think he's kind of the right person to kind of ascend right now into taking over. He wants to do this dollar for dollar balanced budget effect where if you add something, you take something away. And it's like, okay, but then you're cutting, and you're going to be cutting from something where, I would rather spend now and then save it later when we fix the problem. Dental care is a good example for that. We're going to be spending all this money on dental care, but eventually people are going to stop going to the dentist because they have dental care, so their teeth are in a better state, and then it costs us less, right?
I genuinely think that the only reason he's doing that is because he's trying to kind of mitigate the backlash from the conservatives, because that's all they care about. That's all they can see. All they focus on is our national debt. These guys don't even understand what a net debt to like GDP ratio is, right? So I think that he is trying to potentially make some of those conservatives happy along the next couple of years, so that we have less division in our country.
I think
and then that's what I honestly think it's about.
Back into the center, to be fair. Karina Gould, like, I was going to vote for Mark Carney. And then after watching the debate last night, Karina Gould really impressed me.
I think she's great.
Dynamic. Then she was on Power and Politics today, and she's got some great ideas. I just wish she was maybe a couple years older, because, like I said, I think the fact that she's so young, I'm not saying that if she was just a couple years from now, she will definitely be set to be.
She's great for the future. She's great for the future if we survive through this.
Right? She is. Like I said, she really impresses me. Unfortunately, I don't think she would be effective against Trump. I think she's too nice looking. To be honest, right?
And she's she doesn't have that tough personality.
No.
She's a GTA MP, so I've bumped into her a few times in my passings and doing things, and she's a gem of a human. Like, she is actually a really, really nice person, but she just doesn't have that toughness that you
No.
kind of need. I think she will develop that in her time in her career. I think what Karina is doing, and she didn't tell me this, and I don't know this for fact, but I think that she's trying to set herself up for a position in a future Mark Carney government or administration, because, and I think Frank Ballas is doing the same thing, because both of them are able to separate themselves from Trudeau a little bit more than obviously Freeland can.
I didn't even know who Frank Ballas was, and I've sat in caucus a few times, but I think he's been out of caucus for a while, and I haven't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's back
and it
in the
was like,
private sector, I believe.
yeah. So when I hear looking at him going, and Christopher Freeland, I'm sorry, no.
She can't. She's too attached. She's too
It's
attached.
not even that. She just doesn't have. There's just something. Like I said, I've been in the room with her, I've sat in caucus with her. It's just there's something. She's just not prime minister. She's just not. There's just that something. I don't know what it is. It's just my opinion.
She lost her oomph for sure.
But
So,
And we also have to be very honest with the landscape right now. Like, unfortunately, the truth, the reality, as horrible as this sounds, is that we can't have a woman run. And I know that sounds bad.
Yeah,
It's
you're
just,
right.
I'm sorry. I
don't
looked
be
at what
sorry.
happened in the United States, and I
No,
saw
don't
a
be sorry.
giant part of the electorate just not want to vote for her because she was a woman. They didn't even care about her credentials. They didn't care that she was the most qualified person to ever run for U.S. presidency.
Yeah, no, you're right,
Yeah.
Frontline, like you are, and I hate to say that, and they're no more than this country's ready for somebody that's like Jagmeet, and I hate to say that too. It breaks my heart.
well, can I just say that I am so excited if Carney wins, which everything is expected. I'm expecting him to take this thing, probably first ballot at this rate. I think that's pretty expected.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think that debate between Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney, Jagmeet Singh, and Elizabeth May and Blanchette all on a stage together, if Pierre even shows up for
I
it.
don't think he will. And you know who's going to win that debate? Elizabeth May.
Oh, not Elizabeth May or Blanchette, one of the two of them. They're just going to come out with the jab.
He's
But
so
that-
funny.
Can't
that-
wait, man. I'm getting
Elizabeth
popcorn
May.
ready already.
That debate, wherever it is, I might try my best to go there physically so I can watch it. I will pull whatever media strings that I have left in my body to try to be like, can I be in the room? Can I just hang out I'll be quiet. I just want to be in the room, please.
I was actually in Toronto in March. Actually, there was a big expo that I was supposed to go and do some media because I do a podcast where I've been working with a network, whatever, on the MJ side of things for 20 years, and they postponed it. And I was kind of hoping I could meet up with some people when I was in Toronto, but I'm not going to be there now. October.
That's too bad.
October.
Toronto's great.
I know I've been there a few times. I love Toronto. I love Ottawa too, and I want to go to Montreal. Yeah.
We have a big old socialist mayor in power here, and she's just
love her.
not. Olivia Chow,
I love Olivia
fantastic
Chow. I think
woman.
she's absolutely great, and I mean, I don't care what her stripes are. She's doing some fabulous things for Toronto, which I knew she would. She's, Jack Layton's wife, right? But and she did some good things when she was an MP for her riding. I think she's terrific. Like, I'm a
She's
liberal,
got the
but
memory.
I'm
She's
a
got the
liberal. I
memory of
like
her.
NDP's policies too. Some of them, right?
She's moved on from the New Democrats. She's from what I'm to understand, she's not intertwined with them at all anymore after what Mulcair did and all that stuff, and her leaving the party ultimately to become mayor. But Olivia has one of the most amazing memories I have. I briefly worked with on Jack Layton's campaign in 2011 at the riding level when I moved to Toronto, because I moved to Toronto just before that election. I'm like, oh, I gotta help, and Jack Layton was my MP. I lived in his riding, so I was like, I just walked into their campaign office and be like, can I help? What do you need me to do? And I was door knocking and stuff, and the first person I saw when I walked in was Olivia Chow. She was just there, and I bumped into her 3 or 4 weeks ago, just randomly. I was just on the street. I'm like, oh, it's Olivia Chow. I'm like, hi, Olivia. And she's like, oh my God, JB, how are you? I'm like, how do you remember me? I talked to you maybe
Probably
once.
watches you on TikTok.
Oh, that too. But yeah, she's great. And probably one of the biggest things that doesn't get talked about that she did in this city was we don't have space to build out. We can only build up. Like we've ran out of 416 land essentially. So we got to build up, and we're building up a lot. We have a lot of cranes on the ground, and we're building like crazy. So she said, okay, if we're building all these condos, these 50-story, 60-story condo buildings, 30% of them need to be purpose-built rentals, and we're going to control the rent price on it. Oh, you don't want to do that? Well, you're not getting your building permit. Sorry. And now all these condo developments are popping up, and 7, 8 floors of them are affordable rentals. There might be the bottom floors, but that's fine, right? It's doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter if it's housing for people that it doesn't matter. Like right now, with anybody that can, get something, whether it's the best, it's a step up, it's a help in.
Yeah, it's
a
great.
start. Everybody's got to have a start, and even like we were talking about this earlier too, like the houseless. We can do as much as we could. There's always going to be a population that we're never going to be able to house. Unfortunately, they just don't want to be, right? And that's what, as Canadians, we're going to have to understand that we can give them whatever they need. If they don't want it, we can't force it, right? And there's a small population that we're never going to be able to house, but there are so many that just need housing so they can get out of this poverty. But again, you and I've discussed, I think, the universal income benefit, which I think should be put back out there, right?
Can I share my tinfoil hat theory on this? I think the Liberals are going to run on it.
I think they might too.
Because there was.
Want to hear my tinfoil hat thing? Carney needs a riding, and I don't have a candidate, so I'm kind of hoping that maybe I could talk somebody in a parachute him in here.
I think that Carney is going to run in Northwest Territories, and you want to know why?
Because that's where he grew up, yeah.
That's where he grew up, and he can say to the rest of the country, I'm not Ontarian, I'm not Quebec, I'm not Alberta, I'm nothing. I'm a territory. I hang out up here. I'm not attached to any region.
Would he be able to do for them up there?
Exactly.
Like when the Prime Minister as your MP for the territories that so desperately need security and funds and just reconciliation with the Inuit too. Like there's so much that can be done up there.
And we have a territory governor general right now too, with Mary Simon. Right. Like that combo, well, sort of. She's.
But if elections happen, right? Will she stay as the governor general? She should stay as
for a bit.
But if we get the government that we don't want, she will no longer be our governor general.
No, if Pierre gets in, she's gone. I think that she will resign.
Everything will be gone.
But my tinfoil hat theory on the basic income is there was a basic income bill that was going through the House and the Senate at the same time by the New Democrats and then a New Democrat-friendly senator. And it passed first reading, Liberal support. It passed second reading, Liberal support. Got to third reading, no changes to the bill, and Liberals didn't support it anymore. And it's like, well, hold up, why?
It was like, what the hell happened there?
Yeah, it just stopped. And then I think at that point, Trudeau knew he was stepping down. I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall. This was in the summer, right? So I think the writing was starting to be on the wall.
He was so tucked in his heels were dug. He wasn't going anywhere then.
They were dug, but I can guarantee you that there was probably meetings in the Prime Minister's office with his team, gearing up for 2025, being like, you don't have this. And also the U.S. just had Biden step down at that time, and they were seeing the challenges that Harris was going through, rebranding herself away from Joe Biden.
Like board of directors and stuff resigning in the backgrounds too, and a lot of boards changing.
Yeah. So I think that they killed the basic income bill because I think the intention was the Liberals were going to run on it. And I think one of the people that was at that table was Mark Carney, because Mark Carney has also spoken out again in favor of a universal basic income.
It was going on back that far. That's almost a conspiracy theory, JB.
I'm believing it. And I will eat my words if the policies can't come out. And this is how I think they're going to do it. I think Carney's going to win. He's going to ascend to the Prime Minister's office, and he's going to tell the opposition parties, I will give you your opposition days. Give me a budget. You can have your opposition days after. Give me a budget. I'll do it by the start of April. Give me a month, and I'll get a budget out, and then you can vote on the budget, and that will be your confidence. And in that budget is going to be everything that Carney is going to run on. It's going to be basic income. It's going to be all the different, like the ending the consumer carbon tax, all these things. It's going to be all the things.
Dental care, get all that stuff kind of wrapped up into
exactly. Yeah. It passed the capital gains tax, which they can't get done right now. It's still stuck. all these other things. And I think that obviously that's going to be
Capital gains
non-con.
is really not a popular bill, anyways.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get passed, I don't think anybody's going to cry about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But my point is that
it depends on like overtaxing, like if he's taking that carbon tax off and putting the highest taxes on the biggest polluters and all the big corporations, I don't think the capital gains is going to matter.
but this is the thing is like if he removes the consumer carbon tax, then the rebates are going to go away. So people are going to be like, "Where's my rebates?" And he's going to come back with that and be like, "Well, we're going to do basic income, right? And we're going to pay for it with the additional charges that we're going to put on the corporations for their carbon consumption."
If he explains it like that universal benefit then takes out unemployment and disability and all these other
helps lift people out of poverty and all this stuff.
And it's basically not going to cost you anything. It's going to save you $3 trillion because the universal benefit's going to take out that fraud level 2 and close all these other ministries that we don't need, and all the money that you spend on that being basic to
that's the dollar for dollar, right? Is you pay for it. The thing is, and I did my
dollar
TED
for
talk.
dollar for budget, right?
Yeah, I did my whole ass TED talk on this, and
I
people
know.
were
I
like,
watched your TED talk.
"There's no way that you can pay for it in Canada. You can't give $2,000 a month without like absolutely skyrocketing the deficit." I'm like, "You can." Because all you need to do is we collect that money now. We just are giving it to the wrong people. We just need to redistribute it.
Well, never mind the taxes that they can't collect, like in the billions of dollars.
Well, and exactly, you put a condition on it, be like, hey, you want this $2,000 a month, you got to file your taxes.
I think the child tax benefit would stay the same for that would be separate.
We're child tax benefit, disability, all that
disability, stuff. PWDs, and all the AISHs and all the provincial disabilities, unemployment, because you'd still have you still want to pay into CPP. I think CPP is something that we always should pay into so that we have some retirement. But like it would take out welfare, your basic income, like all that kind of things, the social programs, because you don't.
We spend $190 billion a year in Canada on welfare. That doesn't work. It's not enough because of the bureaucracy inside of it that makes it so expensive. And when you just unconditionally say, hey, you filed your taxes this year? Cool. We already have your direct deposit, so we're just going to put $2,000 in there every month. There you go. Thanks.
Right.
That's.
You made a really good point the other day too, which she was on one of the talk shows in the morning and talking about housing inmates at the cost of like $1 million a year. Was it $150,000 per year? But you can't house somebody that's houseless. But they're still, you put them in jail, which is going to cost you $150,000, but you won't give them $1,000 a month for rent. So going along with that same income benefit kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and you could incentivize the provinces to partake. You can say the federal government's going to give them 1,000, and we are asking the provinces to do the other 1,000, or the federal government's going to do 1,500. The other 500 is going to be coming from the provinces because like welfare and ODSP and all these things are provincial costs, so that's going to be recouped. That's long ways down the road, but I think the Liberals have seen enough evidence to learn that a basic income is what. There's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of buzz about it. People are aware of it now. This little thing that I heard about 15 years ago when I was in university, I was like, this is interesting. Why aren't we doing this? And now
they've been doing it in Denmark for,
yeah, I was on a live one a little bit ago with a gentleman from Norway, and he lives in northern Norway. So he gets a basic income because the cost to live up there is just extraordinary. But they pay for that basic income in Norway from the nationalization of their oil supply. So they said to the private oil companies back in the 70s, we're doing this now because we need the money. And now Norway has a $2 trillion just in the bank just to spend. It's like insane. And could you imagine how rich Canada would be if we just nationalized a small percentage of our oil supply? Right.
Well, if we would have
Can I say something real quick? Because I got to get off the live so that I can get ready to take over when you're done in 20 minutes.
Okay.
I just wanted to say to JB, I adore you. You're amazing. What you're doing right now, I honestly feel like is going to change the way that people view politics in Canada. And I'm so grateful for you. And last night's live was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do and that I absolutely adore you, dude.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. And I'm sorry I forgot that we met.
It's all good. It's all good.
The we got this little team going, on Beaver politics, and there's like 10 of us, I think now, or 12 of us, and we just kind of
That's awesome.
keeping some awareness going, and then we it's and all different, right? I mean, we've all got our different little genres, and we all hit on politics no matter what our main topics are supposed to be. We still hit. It just doesn't ever stop.
Yeah,
Especially with the orange potato in the States, like there's just no stopping it. Like it's like the Donald Trump show every day on TV. It's like I gotta get this.
I think that political parties. I said this on Blue Sky today that I think a lot of political parties in Canada are stuck in this sort of like way we do things in 2008, 2011 era. Like they just haven't modernized for the modern day social media. I think the federal New Democrats are making an attempt to create this creator outreach, which is great, but they got other issues they got to fix first before they start to utilize creators. But like the fact that the Carney campaign isn't on this app putting out video like officially on this app. I know there's like fake accounts that like I was like, well, the Carney
With his daughter being the HGs, I'm actually quite surprised that they're not on here too. But
maybe
Carney's
for the
not
actual
really
election.
like he's a banker, right? You like let's like he's a banker. He's like
Yeah.
they don't like their numbers and very like I don't and I haven't met him before. We had a Zoom meeting for lunch when he first announced that he was going to be run for leadership, and he reached out to all the EDAs, and we had a Zoom meeting over over lunch kind of thing, and it was pretty basic. Here I am. This is who I am. Nothing really fabulous. So I don't really know him.
I know nothing about him, and I worked on Parliament Hill when he was the governor of the Bank of Canada. I don't know a single. I didn't know a single thing about him until his name started to be punted around about a year and a half ago. I was like, oh, who's this guy?
I knew he was the Bank of Canada. Like I knew he was the president of the Bank of Canada. I remember hearing them bitching about him in the UK because he was against Brexit, and they
he's smart.
They were banging on about Brexit and how they were going to separate from the EU, and then they did get Brexit, and then everything fell apart. And they just went, well, he was smart to bail, because he just. And I remember hearing about that, but other than that, like I said,
there's a lot of respect for Mark Carney in Ireland because he was a big part of the negotiation for the Northern Ireland exception in Brexit, because he identified from an economic standpoint that if they want to do this Brexit thing, they got to put a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which violates the Good Friday Agreement, which would punt that island back into the Troubles, which the whole reason that I'm in this damn country is because my dad didn't want to raise a kid in the Troubles. I was born over there technically, but I came over here when I was a baby. But like, they'll go right back to that like instantly.
And it was brutal. Like that was a war. Like no matter how you slice it, right? It was brutal.
It was,
and it should never happened. And again, my family's like I'm third generation Canadian. We're not Irish, we're Scotch. But same thing with the British, right? That animosity because of the overkill. Why the Americans don't quite understand why Canadians are so like, F you, we're never going to be 51 because we fought really hard to make it Canada what it is. Because we're all a bunch of mutts, right? Like no matter where we all come from, we're all a bunch of mutts, right?
Yeah.
First Nations deserve reconciliation first and foremost. I think that's my biggest stance on everything. That we need to let them, we need to work with them first and foremost, always.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I've got the I am Canadian. I'm not sure what they wanted to say here, but I'll give them a 5 minutes. And I've got to wrap it up here in about 15 minutes anyways, because we're doing 3-hour stints. So Frontline Feminist will be back on Beaver Politics at midnight, and she'll be on for the next 3 hours after me. But what we do is we actually end the live, and then she comes back on. So we got about 15 minutes before I wrap everything up. So if anybody wants to jump up quick, have anything last to say, because I want to thank JB for coming up. I really appreciate you.
No problem.
I appreciate you too. I watch you. I kind of like, sneak around in the background, but I appreciate the information that you give out because it's really hard, especially keeping the misinformation to adult work, right? Why I do the Beaver Politics history, like I do the Canadian history with a purple crayon on Fridays, kind of teaching basic social studies because so many people just don't seem to understand jurisdiction.
I agree. It's rough.
Yeah, well,
I'll hang around.
We just need to have better education systems with our provinces not cutting healthcare, and education, right? Mental health, education, all these things they keep cutting.
Oh no, Addie's here. Everyone watch out.
Uh-oh.
I don't know who Addie is, but hi,
Addie's,
Addie.
Addie's one of my moderators. She sells
Oh, nice.
she sells doors for a living. That's a totally true fact, and I didn't make that up.
That's
Uh,
great. That's great. I used to sell freight for a living. Now I sell chips and pop.
hey, whatever works. She doesn't sell doors.
That's my retirement job behind a till where I don't have to have any responsibility. I love it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think I am Canadian wanted to say something.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, I am Canadian? Hello? You're mute. Your mic's mute. Okay, well, I didn't unplug you. Okay, well, I don't know what happened to him there, but we'll just disconnect because I have no time for that. Either speak up or forever hold your peace. There's lots of windows open if anybody wants to come up and ask questions, but we got like 15 minutes, and I'm going to be passing it off to Frontline Feminists, and we'll be continuing on for the next 24 hours on the election connection,
That's
which
crazy.
is to, keep up, and like we're just going to keeping the momentum for the next 24 hours. Tomorrow, of course, during the election, when the polls close, after the polls close, we'll all be on to keeping up with the numbers as real time as we possibly can. Hey, we've got a bunch of crazy people that are on the network that live in Ontario that wanted to do this too. So
Yeah, no, I'm doing my own thing, obviously, because that's what I do, but not to kind of compete. But
oh no, absolutely not.
this is my province too, right? So this is like,
absolutely. I mean, I'm in British Columbia. I'm just part of the team, so I'm just kind of doing my 3-hour stint. But I'll be watching everybody tomorrow to kind of keep in tune to what's going on through all the lives because I'm not on tomorrow.
So a big part of what we do at Smart Voting is I haven't published this data on the site, but I do it every time as we run simulations. So we do a Monte Carlo simulation in every riding, and there has been, and this should give you hope as a BC resident, there has been significant numbers of times when the federal election simulated with the current polling doesn't get decided until BC's votes get counted. So just with the way how tight it is in Ontario right now and in Quebec, there's just not enough that's allocated for the Conservatives and the Liberals. And then it gets out to BC, and that's the crutch. That's when it flips to one of the other parties. It's not every time,
No.
but it's enough of the times that I've been able to notice it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, your election was like 22 votes. Is what like basically decided the BC election. This last election,
Yeah,
it was 22 votes, and it took, I think it was almost 3 weeks before the decisions finally came in. And then Rusted wanted a recount, and they're the most horrible individuals ever.
It's so frustrating because like our election model, like Elections Canada and the provincial counterparts have their issues. Don't get me wrong, but I think if Canada's going to export anything about how to run a democracy, it should be our electoral processes. This independent, bipartisan, third-party agency that obviously gets funded by the government, but that's all that they have government control over, and they're mandated to receive that funding. And the not just like the actual administering of elections, but the security, like they store these ballots. Every ballot that's ever been done by every Canadian is sitting in a vault in Ottawa to this very day. I think they store for like 100 years or 50 years or something.
Yeah, 110 years. And now they've tightened up the Elections Canada rules so much that when you work for Elections Canada the day of the election, before you could go out for a cigarette and have, maybe take a half-hour lunch break, you're not allowed to leave now.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a good friend that I'm not going to out on here, but she got hired for this election in Ontario to do election security. So she's like working on the back end to make sure there's not like interference and stuff like that. And she told me, she's like, I've never seen a more secure election than this in my life.
Even the last one that I worked as like just a clerk in the first, like it was way laxer than these ones now. Like we could go and have a cigarette and go and grab a sandwich. In fact, they brought lunch in for us. But
yeah,
not anymore.
Yeah, it's they're taking it very seriously, which is great. I love to see it, but like that's something that we need to farm out to these other countries. Is like this is how we do it, and it does work. And I do want to give a PSA before you go that if you're looking, well, if you go to Smart Voting, but if you look at any riding maps or you're looking at results or future projections, your riding in this election that's coming up probably changed. They redrew the lines and they renamed a lot of them.
Yeah,
So
well,
if
yeah,
you're looking
we lost out. We lost out. Like I'm now South Kootenay or
right,
Kootenay Rocky South Kootenay or something like, or Columbia Kootenay South, and they took Golden and Revelstoke out. So we're a smaller, but we still go into Nelson, and it's still a huge riding. But yeah,
I'm in a brand spanking new one. I have no MP. Like when you look at like all the pollsters and stuff, it's like for this riding, there's no incumbent because I'm in like one of the new ones,
yeah,
and which is pretty cool because I'm going to be able to like decide the first member of this riding.
that's
But
cool.
I'm since we launched the federal model, we probably got over 200 emails in the last couple hours being like, I can't find my riding. It's not on the list. I'm like, it's
I need to
there.
find a candidate to flip this riding. You know, the NDP have got two. They were fighting over the candidacy already. They're doing they did an AGM, and they've got two people that were actually running for the candidate for the
For
NDP
the
for the
Democrats?
and I don't even have a candidate, and I don't know what I'm gonna do because they don't. I don't know. It's not
Yeah,
as the
it's
easy to look for them, to be fair.
the New Democrats have asked me to run 4 times now, and I'm like, I just no, I can't. I can't do it. I have a young kid. I'm not putting them through that.
And it costs a lot of money. Like even like our MP here, our MLA here, the last election, it cost him over $90,000 to run this last BC election.
Yeah, and you got
I
to
don't
somehow
think
fundraise that. It's like
well, yeah, like I don't have that kind of friends and family and money, and no, I just and besides, I'd rather be an advocate and an advocate to keep activists to keep their toes to the fire than be one of them. That's how I just.
that's my stance on it. I think in my future life, I would pursue maybe like a senator, maybe like in the right chain of events.
I think the
If
Senate's useless. I think it's just appointed
yeah,
that cost us money that we don't really need.
but
I
I'm
think
a
after the
big
bill's been passed and the House has voted on it, and everybody agrees that should just be the end of it.
I'm a big procedural guy though. Like I'm a big about government procedure. And when I worked on the Hill in the media side, I spent a lot of time in the Senate, so I did see what it did. And I would think it needs reform. Don't get me wrong, but I think that would be the path for me. I'm more of like an upper house kind of person.
What year did you work
But
on the Hill? What year did you work on the
it
Hill?
was during Harper. It was 2000. I started in 2009 and I left in 2012.
Oh, we were protesting in 2012,
I worked.
in February of 2012.
Yeah, I got
We were
laid
there.
off. I got laid off on Bell Let's Talk Day 2012
Oh shit! I'm sorry to hear that.
because that's when I worked for Bell, and that's when they do their layoffs is on Bell Let's Talk Day because
Right.
good old
Oh, let's
Bell.
talk day, mental health day. Let's say you can go find a new job.
They do it on purpose because it controls the media narrative. So instead of getting news about Bell with 5,000 layoffs, they get news about dogs are saying something. Time for you to go. But yeah, I was on the press side, so I got a really good vantage point of. I spent a lot of time in stairwells trying to find members of parliament running away from trying to talk to the press. I was.
I know. I was actually. Last time I seen Hannah Thibodeau was at the 2014 convention in Montreal, and I was so happy to see her doing the debate last night. I'm like, oh, there's Hannah. But we were actually standing at the top of the Benzinia, and Polyev come up the escalator, and I'm just like, what's that clown doing here? Like at the Liberal convention. I'm like in Montreal. I'm like, what the hell? Yeah. That was my first encounter with old Pierre.
My only encounter with Pierre was we needed a statement from cabinet ministers, and he was a cabinet minister at the time. And Pierre was always the one that we couldn't get for a comment. Like he was a snaky little weasel that we just couldn't find when we needed to find him. Scrum was there and he was gone. It was like, so I was like, I'm gonna just hang out over here, and I found the like exit staircase that he took off on. And I was like, hey, Pierre, CTV News, can I get a statement, please? And he was like, no. And he just walked away. I'm like, okay, bye. Like, see you later. He's a jerk. But that's before his makeover. Before he took the glasses off. But all right, well, I'll let you go because I know you're rotating, but
Oh, there we go. I was having troubles unmuting. The dogs are going crazy. But yeah, I gotta wrap this up so that Frontline can come on anyway. But yeah, I mean, he's him and Michael Cooper are my most favorites. Michael Cooper.
Michael Cooper has skeletons in his closet, I'm convinced.
Polyev does too. You just have to go digging in Calgary for a while. We're finding out lots.
we'll have to
I
talk.
want to dig on his property in Ottawa that he has rented out to Michael Cooper. Funny enough.
I
So
know. I was actually talking about that just earlier today, and how he's double dipping because you pay, the taxpayers pay for the MP. That MP is now paying rent that he gets paid for, subsidy by the government too. That's going into Poilievre's pocket.
that shouldn't be allowed. Like
No,
I feel like
it's a
that's
council.
something that should be illegal.
It
Like
is.
I agree that members who are like from BC need a place to live while they're in Ottawa. I get that, right? And I think there should be a subsidy that is given to them to at least find a place. But I think that they're a portion of their revenue or their income should go to pay rent or a mortgage or something. Like
Yeah,
I think that's I if
but it
I
shouldn't be
moved to
going into
Ottawa for a
Poilievre's
job, I
pocket.
could when I moved to Ottawa for my work, when I worked for Bell, I had to get an apartment and I had to pay my rent for it from my employment income. Like that was just what we had
Doesn't
to
That's
do.
what everybody should have to do, but like again, like it's double dipping. And again, I just also want to mention too that when you want to talk about infiltration and stuff that's coming into that whole, they want to point at Russia and China, and the Congo was paid for by the United States Republicans. So, and then you got endorsements coming up from the United States on the conservative side, even for this guy.
Uh-huh.
I have to wonder, and he's standing there with his Never 51. I don't believe him.
Who gave him a hat, by the way? Whose decision was that? I was so mad when he came out with that stupid fucking hat.
Who gave yeah, like, what is that? He's just
I,
trying to
I
be
uh,
mini Trump, only he's the same size as Michelin Trump.
my favorite thing I got to do was I got to boo him this past summer at a pride parade in the GTA. He was just there, and I'm like, here we go. And he was like waving and shaking hands. I'm just like, boo, just like screaming like right in his face. It was so satisfying. It's like,
It's the petty things
uh,
sometimes, right?
he's a
It's so
politician.
petty, I just want to do it.
Yeah, he's a politician. I should be able to boo in your face. That's just kind of
Right?
how that works. But
Hey, Trudeau took rocks. We don't do that. We don't throw rocks. We just
no,
boo. We got a little more class than that, right? Like, but yeah, the politics have gone pretty vitriol. I can't even say that. I don't even know what this next election. I'm scared.
my local MP was at a little community event, and he's a conservative, and he came up to me and he shook my hand. He's like, "Hey, nice to see you." And I shook his hand back, and I looked him straight in the eye. I'm like, "Sorry, I only talk to people whose leaders have security clearances." And he pulled his hand away, and like the look he gave me was like a death stare. He was like, "How dare you?" I'm like, "I'm serious about this." Like,
That's so epic.
right?
Well, it's the
Like,
truth.
I hope that they door knock on my door. I hope to God that scrummy little Pierre appears at my door knocking someday, or is
Wouldn't
like
that
in
be
my town,
funny?
because I will go and I will heckle loudly. Like,
Right? Like I just can't even like yeah. But yeah, the two of them together just I have got skits and I got SNL skits running through my head that but they're just too much. But again, we have a little bit of reprisal until we have to figure out what's going to happen in the federal election. I would imagine we probably get about 6 weeks because May
June 10th,
19th.
June
Yeah,
10th,
yeah, I think. Are
June
they going to
10th,
draft it right away? Okay.
June 10th with May 2 for debate.
Wow.
Think about it. It's not bad. It's not a bad calendar for an
So the
election.
way the polls are looking right now, the quicker the better. To be honest,
June
because
10th.
Polyev has puffed his way out, and the momentum's good because 27,
Carney's not going to pass a
27
budget, and he's going
points,
to ask for a elongated campaign. 55 days.
27 points, 27 points in 5 days. Who does that?
It's astonishing. All right, I'll let you go. Take
I
care.
gotta. You too. It
Bye-bye.
was nice having you on. See ya.
Yeah, see you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that is me wrapping up this portion of our election connection. Thanks everybody for coming in. Thanks for tapping, clapping, and follows. And thanks for JB for coming and being, that was amazing. And Frontline is going to be on next. And thanks for her for coming up and joining into the conversation too. And Angela as well. Again, this is a 24-hour election connection from Beaver Politics. We are going to keep you up to date on what's going on for the next 24 hours on the Ontario election. Please connect on every aspect that you can. Do some research. There's a lot of people that will be out at the polls tomorrow, and smartvoting.ca again is a tool that you can use that will find the best person for your riding. You need to look for your MPP.
The best person for your riding is your MPP. You're not voting for Doug Ford or Bonnie Crombie or Merritt Stahl or Mike Sherlin. You are voting for the MP in your area. So, on that note, it's midnight. I've had a long day. I worked all day and I've just done 6 hours of this. So, you guys have a good night. I will talk to you on Friday on Beaver Politics History with Purple Crayon with me. Bye.